That's enough of that. Okay. Make sure we are ready to go. And by ready to go, I mean, um, I mean, I mean, um, wah. Hello, Wang Spangle. Is the Spangle wangin' or is the wangin' spanglin'? I don't know what I just said. Hello, Flygon. Okay, so we're gonna finish this game today, and then after we finish this game, we'll probably have time left over. I'm gonna use that time left over to, continue reading, like I was supposed to do last week, but wasn't able to because of things, and stuff, and objects, and thing. Spang dingle bang spingle wang jingle. Nice. Doug Dimmadome, over the Dimsdale Dimmadome. We're on chapter 6-1, and I think there's only 2 chapters left after 6-1, so yeah, we'll easily finish this today. Alright, so what do we got? Inventory-wise here. So we got flash, electric rounds. Electric rounds are nice because they stun. Upgrade, maybe? I mean, it does enough damage. We'll probably use that later. Let's go ahead and just, for the sake of inventory space. Plenty of magnum ammo. I think as far as ammo, we're good. Let's get a couple more healing items. Or one more healing item, I guess, because that's all we can afford. Good thing is, like, this game, unlike RE4, you can buy as many of those as you can afford, which kind of does trivialize things a little bit, but it is what it is. Alright. I think... Let me get that out of here. I think I'm...
Oh my god!
Oh yeah, Albert Wusker. Hello, Albert Wusker. 7 minutes. 7 minutes is all the time I have to spare to play with you. Alright. Ship deck. Punching some boulders, are we? Yes. Grass! How dare you not let me take over the world with overcooked pasta noodles? It's pretty much what your Ouroboros look like.
Huge.
It's huge, like
Do you think they're planning
Xbox.
to use it to spread Ouroboros?
Alright.
No, using a ship like this would give away their position too soon. They must have another plan.
There we go. I hope I don't soft lock myself by doing that, because I know one of them does have to jump down from somewhere. There we go. Okay. Punch! Oh, why am I turning so slow? Punch! Punch! Excuse me. Punch! Come on, Sheva, get him. There we go. Oh, wait. Oh, excuse me. I thought you were dead. There we go. Oh, okay. Alright, off to a great start here. Did you drop anything? Here, make my heal bot pick it up. Oh, that's a grenade! Alright, here we go. Okay. Come on, Sheva. Get the rifle ammo, because you're an aim bot with them. Here, let me go. No. Sure, why not? Here. Sure, she gets plenty of rifle ammo. Because she likes to waste a lot of it, but... it's whatever. So I've seen a patch or a mod or whatever you want to call it that allows you to actually just request and trade weapons on the fly. I swear I remember doing that on the original Xbox 360 version. I don't know why that's not something that's featured in the PC version. I think it might be a bug. But it would be cool to, like, trade weapons on the fly.
You grab it.
Okay.
I might just be remembering co-op, because I know you can do it in co-op especially. Alright, we're gonna have dogs, that's why I pulled out the shotgun. Okay, puppies! Bad dogs. I have a lot of shotgun ammo, I just realized. Here. Excuse me. I hate how much armor these guys have. You can't... Oh. Well, that's a problem. Well, let's just, and there we go. Just finished upgrading my ship in Starfield. The cost for everything is like 88,000 credits, so I assume that's an absolute huge amount because I have not played the game. Punch! And bam! I love those combos. Oh, thank you. Whoa, my camera's going all over the damn place. Alright. Oh boy, what a way to wake up this morning and just get right into this kind of crap. That is quite a lot. See, with Bethesda games, I'm kind of weird. So I never buy those types of games until they're out for a bit. And then, like, kind of just let the mod scene develop, let all the expansions and DLC come out. Because you know there's going to be DLC and expansions to that game. There is... That's just the norm, right? Oh. And once all that comes out... Don't waste ammo. They don't get that, and there'll also be like a healthy mod scene at that point. Here, can she? She can't take it. What is...
Come on!
Roger.
her inventory full of? Really? Okay. Let's see. She doesn't really need that flash grenade. Because I've got plenty of flash grenades with this. Here, exchange this. Discard, we don't need that. Really? Sheva, please. Okay.
Take it.
Roger.
There we go. Chris used Boulder Punch, became a meme! Yes. Mod support coming out at some point next year. Some point next year? I would have thought the game would have released with mod support. It's kind of like their whole thing.
Take it.
Roger.
I guess maybe they mean like, you know, proper actual tools. Like the dev kits and whatnot. Maybe that's what they mean. And hello, John. Good to see ya. Good to see ya. Hope you're having a wonderful-iferous Thursday. So that was something I've was talking about a bit about yesterday. Like, just briefly touched on. Ooh, there's a chest up there. Is, what if, like once a month or something, we had a bit of a movie night or something like that. Granted, the only problem that I see is that it'd be a little late for a lot of you guys. A bit too late. Like, what I'd do, probably, I'd probably just host it in VRC and then just point the camera at it if I streamed it to Discord. And then people who want to join could join. That sort of thing. Because I can stream to Discord, no problem. I don't know what it is about streaming OBS, but I can stream VRC to Discord easy. Like, there's no difficulty. Push button. Now the question I have is, how do we get up here? Just finished writing chapter 1, gotta do interlude 1 and some stuff. Said we'll be uploading probably... We'll upload to probably so free, and that will be all for now. Hey, nice. Nice, nice. Speaking of writing and reading type things, I'll be doing that after today's Resident Evil 5 shenanigans, provided I finish in time. I think I should. I'm more than able to. I need a keycard to open it. Alright, let's hope the game doesn't bug out here. It can soft lock here.
Sheva, hurry! Roger. Hurry!
Okay.
Alright, don't go down there yet. I need... Oh, wait. Can I really not just jump over this That's so dumb. What if I just... Oh. Well done, Sheva. That's not really what I wanted, but okay. Excuse me. Ow! I just got bonked. Sheva, you have to shoot the... There we go. Okay, it didn't block. Although I'm not really sure if I would space well, like if the paragraphs are not too far apart. That's why editing is a thing. Yes. So when it comes to paragraph spacing and that sort of thing, that's a grenade. When it comes to that sort of thing, anywhere from 3 to 6 sentences is what I usually consider enough for a paragraph. And the way a paragraph should start should also be should be a short sentence, and the way a paragraph should end should be a short sentence. Hello, Onward. Well, that might be a problem, but style's never per author. Yeah, styled, but it's more like how it reads, right? Like, how does the thing flow? So, you start a paragraph with a short sentence, you do a longer sentence, and then the longest... You want to keep the longest sentences towards the middle of the paragraph, and then taper off to shorter. It makes a paragraph read a lot smoother. Like, try it yourself with something, and you'll see what I mean. Like, there's no hard, concrete rules when it comes to it. Like, you can try something you think would work best. But that's just generally the thing that I've seen done and think works pretty well.
I'm not going on without you. Come on.
Just write a story between ages 11 to 16. They weren't good, but they were something. Pick up the ammo. What does she have that where she can't pick? Oh, are you kidding me? Oh my god. No! Get back here, Sheva. Piece of shit.
Come on! 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 Come on!
God, I hate Sheva. Stop running off.
Come on!
Use this.
Much appreciated. Come on!
I can't
Come on,
take
you
this.
grab it.
Okay.
God. Stop. Egg rotten. Ooh. Too bad the inventory in this game sucks ass. It's amazing how little you can carry in this game compared to previous Resident Evils. Jump. 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 Okay. Gold! Uh-oh. I don't know why they explode. Anyways. Shoot their... Well, the ones that instantly... If you shoot their grenades on their chests, they instantly explode. But those don't have grenades, so... I don't know. Alright, 2 big man Majini. Here we go. That's literally what they're called. They're called big man. What are you doing, Sheva? Like, see that? Why did she go over there? Stop! I need the... Oh my god. I'm trying to... See? Dumbass. Where are you going? Where are you going, woman? Like, I'm trying to get the 3-hit combo, but... But I guess not, because she insists on standing on the opposite end. Like, if she went over there while I was standing on the yellow platform, that'd be fine. But she doesn't, because she's stupid. Oh, she'll come with me when I'm down here, which is... Oh my goodness. Oh my god. Oh my god, how did Capcom get away with this game?
Come on!
Roger.
What is she doing down there?
You grab it.
Okay.
There. Hello, Astros. Welcome on in. Hope you're doing well. Okay. Well, me doing well. Good to hear. Good to hear. I hear doggies. Oh, that's a doggy. My car passed annual inspection. That's good. Hey, there you go. So it's safe and edible. It passed health inspection. How many are there? God. Chill with the dogs. The worst common enemy in any Resident Evil game. Dogs. I gotta love when the game gives you ammo for guns you don't have. Like, sure, you don't have to pick it up, but it's Magnum ammo. It's rare. Granted, I think Magnum ammo is a special case. There's, like, more set drops for it. But there isn't like, really any natural drop or chance for it. Oh my goodness. And they can only hold a box of 12?
Come on!
Okay.
Where is she at? Like, why is she just waiting all the way over there? What does she want? It's a Volvo, surely safe. The edible part is only applicable if you have armor-piercing teeth.
Take it!
Roger.
Well, I mean, look at my mouth. Do these not look armor-piercing? I'm going to eat Astro's car. Actually, the problem is with these tusks, couldn't open my mouth wide enough to even use them, so they're just there.
Come on! Hurry!
Why did you pick up that grenade, Sheva? Did I give you permission to pick up that grenade? I don't think so. That's okay, we got enough. It's not James May approved, it was not Dacia Sendero. Who's Dalmatian Sombrero? Jingle bells, shotgun shells, I'm gonna break your legs.
This tanker is so big. It won't be easy finding Wesker.
My name is Chris Redfield, I
Once he
need some
knows we're
eggs.
here, you'll find us.
And how do you know that?
Let's just say we have a history together, and he's not the type to let grudges go.
Top Gear and Dacia Sendero's European-made car that James May on the
You
show
must
was
have done
constantly
something
talking
to
about.
piss him off.
Ah.
It goes a
They look like our
bit
armor-piercing darts, but I think they're too short anyways.
So-
Too short! They go all the way down to my chin!
Maybe. But not until after we put an end to all this. Deal?
Okay, but I'm willing to that.
I mean, it's kind of funny, in the stories, after he gets his tusks, Octa kind of sometimes just gets annoyed at having them more than anything, because it's like, what are these even for? They don't do anything. They just block my ability to drink coffee or whatever. Or if they don't have coffee, they have Listorian tea. Cool. Jailbreaker shotgun. Oh no. Anyway.
Sheva! Come on!
Yeah, I've never really watched Top Gear. I've seen bits and pieces of it.
What's going on here?
Nothing that concerns either of you.
We're not giving you an option. Now spit it out.
Tell us what we want to know and you won't get hurt. Where's Wesker?
If you can behave yourselves, maybe I'll tell you.
Damn it!
She's tough. I'll give her that much. What's this?
It's not tough, your aim just sucks.
Chris, is this...
Whatever it is, Excella seemed protective of it.
Investigate. There's those flowers again. Just how much research do the flowers need? Yep, it's those flowers again. Ooh, look, more rifle ammo.
Take it!
Roger.
Game's providing Sheva with a decent amount of rifle ammo. I do like that. Can I go this way? No.
Come on!
I can't right now.
Hmm. Yay! Gun my genies. These suck. Ow, 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 ow. Nice cover video game. Give me a cover option that doesn't even work. Here, actually, I have an idea. Here, that'll allow me to change position a bit. There we go. That did nothing. Why is that even there? One of the things that makes me laugh in Starfield is food items you can find. For example, crispy alien nuggets. Do not make nuggets out of the alien. Tonight on bottom gear. Chris looks at flowers for the 57th time. Sheva gets asked to speed up precisely 133 times. Enemies suck ass like any Japanese game. Tonight on bottom gear. That's a grenade, Sheva. You're standing right on top. Where do these guys come from? What? What you what do we me? Too many gun-wielding enemies. I did see a mod that replaces the gun-wielding enemies with melee enemies, which I think I would enjoy more. Because this game is not good at shooter versus shooter. Like, the first half or 3/4 of this game are alright. It's when the gun enemies start getting introduced. What the hell? Okay. This is like that, naked gun meme.
Come on!
Roger.
Take it.
Okay.
Alright, is that a laser tripwire? No. Hi. Okay. Don't bonk me. Oh, I have to reload. Excuse me. Tonight on second reverse gear, Sheva's ass eats a grenade, damage like it's nothing. Chris steps outside someone, or Chris steps on someone's arm, and the enemies get the Second Amendment rights. It's JJ! I think that's his actual name. Alright. Oh. Nice.
Their weapons keep getting bigger. Take cover.
I took his hat. I got your hat. That's... Oh. No! He spins too fast. Good sir, would you mind not spinning so fast? I'm trying to avoid your gun. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. This thing has spread that's way too wide. Sheva, we wouldn't have this problem if you just do your little combo thing instead of trying to fucking shoot him! Stop trying to shoot him, Sheva! This is stupid. Just melee him, Sheva, so I can... off this platform. Oh. That was stupid. That was stupid. Like, do your little combo thing, Sheva. It does a lot more damage than guns do in this game. For some reason, the melee combos always do more damage. Death, bullet to the knee and slapped a lot. Yeah.
Take it.
Okay.
You grab it. Sheva, take the herb.
Give me a grenade.
Use this.
That's not a grenade, Chris. That's a landmine.
Sheva! Sheva! Come on! Hurry!
Roger.
Whether my friend with a sniper in CSGO. Yeah, I mean, she is very accurate with snipers. It's just her pathing AI and whatnot is awful. That's a problem. What are you aiming at, Sheva? This is basically the part where the game tries to make you waste ammo. I don't even know where that one came from. Oh. Plantable grenade. Aw, I can't get that. Just use all your, yeah, pretty much just use all your ammo because we're gonna put enemies that you absolutely cannot get even remotely close to. You have to shoot them. That's one thing that I definitely do like a lot more about Resident Evil 4. Is that, if you're good enough, you can do a knife only of the whole game. This game, you can't. There's just certain enemies that will just obliterate you if you try. Which may sound like, it makes it more challenging. Well, it does, just in all the wrong ways. There's so much ammo that the game feeds you
Come on,
anyway, so...
caution.
Alright, upsy stairsy, or upsy elevatory. Where's the classic elevator music? Do 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 do.
So, you've made it this far.
Do 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 do.
Too bad you won't make it much further.
A new superior breed of humans, given birth by the progenitor virus. The Wesker children were entrusted with endless potential.
Start singing sea shanties
Of them,
quietly.
only one survived.
Now we are ready to head for the horn. Way,
Are
hey,
you saying it was
roll
wicked
and go.
finisher?
I was to become a god. Creating a new world with an advanced race of human beings. However, all was lost with Raccoon City. Despite that setback, your creation still holds great significance. Now my candle burns dimly. Ironic, isn't it? For one who has the right to be a god. To face his own mortality.
The right to be a god. That right is now mine.
Why does Wesker talk so weird? The right to be a god. That right is now mine. Yes, I.
The right to be a god. You. Arrogant even until the end. Only one truly capable of being a god deserves that right.
There's a Crabominable in chat if anyone wants it.
The right. With Uroboros, I have that right.
Somehow got an S for slop. Oh boy. Alright, inventory management time. So next chapter is chapter 6-2, which I believe we fight a flower. So I don't need the magnum yet, but I will need it. Yes, we're gonna punch a flower in the face. Just fair warning. Let's see, we don't really need that. Explosives can be useful to have. Fight a flower? Yeah, you'll see, you'll see. That. One jewel bungle. I probably missed a bunch of treasures on the way. That's okay. It's reverse plants versus zombies. Yes, it's zombie plant versus Chris and orbital laser cannon. You'll see. It's something. It's a thing. I'll say it is a thing. Let's see. We got plenty of shotgun ammo. We're probably going to use that a lot just on the general enemies here. Move. What can I upgrade here? Firepower, I'm not. Capacity, not too worried about that. Reload speed, not too worried about that. What about this? Oh, yeah, here we go. More damblage for the snipper whiffle. I like to guess what? What? The lone wolf. I got a new whittling knife in the mail. These jokers sent 2 band-aids with it. Yep. I actually have a little whittling kit. I've never used it, but in the box there's actually like a pack of band-aids. It's kind of funny. You know, so be careful, but understand that anything that does require a sharp knife fork, you're probably gonna get some cuts and bruises. It's just part of the part of the thing, so. Well, maybe not bruises, but cuts, yeah. It's just, you know, anything that involves handling like the sharp things. Like, when I used to do model kits, like, you know, you're using an X-Acto knife a lot, so having band-aids on hand is just part of the deal. Got plenty of flash rounds. Okay. Got a couple of these. I probably could have upgraded my Magnum, but I'm not too worried about that. Like, it does like 3,000 damage per shot anyways. Yeah, so... Oh, I already fully upgraded its firepower, that's why. Anyways. Okay, here we go. Eggs. Contrary to popular belief, we actually don't need eggs right now. Go ahead and just... there. Because I'm going to be using the shotgun a lot here so I can save my pistol for the boss fight. Because I can't get close enough on this boss fight to use the shotgun. Bummer. Alright, you ready to see a giant flower? Look! Meat! Let the bodies hit the floor. Let the bodies hit the floor. Be like a 2008 YouTube video. If it's not let the bodies hit the floor, it's what was it, 009 sound system or something?
Excella, what's going on?
Why? When I've done so much. All for you.
Chris, how nice of you to join us.
Wesker.
Don't worry. Your mission is at its end. Ouroboros is on the eve of its appearance. 6 billion cries of agony will birth a new balance.
Sorry, Wesker, but not on my watch.
Albert! You said we change this world together. Why?
Why'd you feed me that bad Taco Bell?
Wesker doesn't give a damn about anybody but himself.
Soon, even you will understand, Chris. One glimpse of my new world, and it will all make perfect sense.
Show yourself!
Unfortunately, it's too late for you. You will not live to see the dawn. Sorry, Excella, but it appears Ouroboros has rejected you. Though you have been an excellent asset, I have one last task for you.
Albert!
The hell?
Farewell, old friend.
Oh, cute, by the way. You're cute, Onward. The tree is growing. Now, originally this would have been a QTE sequence, but fortunately QTEs are disabled. Alright.
Persistent son of a bitch.
So now what? Do you think our weapons can hurt that thing?
I don't know. We gotta get the hell out of here before it destroys this place.
I kind of...
We can't stay here!
I kind of like the way that, like, the little finger things on it are moving around. I don't know, it just kind of looks cool. I gotta scoot out. Work is demanding. I hope you have a most wonderful night. See you later. Drink water. Water? Okay. Hydration. Ugh. Gamer maintained. Very large thing. Nothing.
Come on!
Forget it.
You grab it.
Roger.
I don't know why I'd want a proximity bomb on this level, but okay.
Take this.
Anything in the locker? Here we go. Nothing. The most metal birthday present ever. Nothing. Love that episode of Metalocalypse.
Look how big it's become.
What are the... Get up. On your feet. Now get down. I get knocked down. And I get up again. Oh. Ooh.
Take this.
Oh. Isana decided, get up, get down, make your mind.
Take it.
Roger.
It's not about, you know, what they do. It's about the fact that they obey my orders. Goopy arm. Nothing. Something.
Take it.
There you go. Happy Huntress. How you doing, Tracer? It's good to see you. Hope you're doing well. Read document. Spencer's notebook. Okay, speed reading done. Anyways, doing good, just making it through the day. Automatic navigation engaged. I can't operate it. How convenient. How conveniently inconvenient. The thing is, Giganto, we have to take it out before it destroys the ship. But why? I have so much shotgun ammo. Too much, one might say. Let's see here. Well, she can't really use a red herb. 2 green herbs. Why did she pick that up anyways? Okay, Sheva. Here's some lore. Satellite laser Shango operating manual. The Shango satellite laser is operated using a rocket launcher style laser targeting device LTD that sends targeting coordinates to the satellite. The satellite is then capable of firing a highly concentrated laser to within centimeters of the target. Yes. Yes.
A satellite laser. We just might have a chance. The targeting device is on the roof. Come on, there's no time to lose.
Okay. Alright.
You grab it.
Okay.
Okay, we're gonna see the flower soon. Behold, flower. It's a big flower.
That thing is huge. Do you really think we can kill it?
Okay. I couldn't move there. That's kinda rude.
Watch out! It's firing off some sort of projectiles!
Come on, Roger. Come on, Roger. Come on.
Okay.
I don't know why it's dropping grenades for me, but okay. Giant enemy sunflower. Okay, a laser.
It's all on you, Chris. I've got your back.
More!
Chris, above you!
Excuse me, I need to reload. Sheva, would you She's just shooting the little thingies. Stop. Why is the game even giving me so many grenades? I wonder if the satellite, doing all the shooting stuff, then why the hell does targeting device need a charging time? Maybe it's indicating that the satellite is recharging. I don't know. Stop dropping thingies. Why is it so full of ammo? Excuse me. It's like a piñata for ammo. You know what they say, when a game give you grenades? I don't know either. Well, there were more enemies to route? I didn't even see any more on that level. Was I supposed to wait there and let it spawn more goopy things? Alright, next chapter is the final chapter, so we will take the L Hawk. Unfortunately, we can't take the W Hawk. Move. Wow. Game give us no money. There we go. We don't need this much shotgun ammo. Wow. Unfortunately, I can only take 24 shots. Wait, what did it? No. Get out of here. It should still be enough, but, you know. There we go. Fill out her rifle ammo. Didn't use really many healing items there. Okay. Actually, here. Really? I can't... There. Here, we'll need the electric rounds. If this chapter is what I'm remembering. I'll give... Oh, actually, what I could do this. Turn her into an ammo mule. Yeah, we don't need that. And give her one free space for rifle ammo, and that's it. There we go. So, we got plenty of Magnum ammo, it looks like. Cool. Excellent. Outstanding. Good. Now, I won't really need to use that Magnum until later on, but still.
So that's Ouroboros. I fear for the world if that ever gets out.
God damn it, Wesker. He's actually serious about destroying the entire planet.
This way? Yeah. I'll do it just each spot each time. I think it's just the satellite's weapon recharging.
Wait.
And somehow this boat, this cargo ship, has a fucking launch platformer. Or a launch platform.
throughout the world.
He's planning to use this to spread it. Wesker, there he is. Come on, let's go.
I think it's because a video game needs to be a video game. Okay.
Jill, are you all right?
I'm fine. Don't worry about me. Just listen carefully. There's something I need to tell you. Wesker's superhuman strength. It comes from a virus. But the virus is unstable. In order to maintain a balance, he must inject himself regularly with a serum.
So if we cut the supply of serum, he loses his strength.
Affirmative. But he just took a dose, so it's gonna be a while before he needs another one.
Damn.
Listen, Excella said that the amount administered has to be precise. So if he injects too much, it should act like a poison. I think she used the serum labeled PG67AW.
PG67AW.
I'm gonna try to find a way to escape. You need to find that serum. Excella always kept it with her, and that's how she came.
Jill, come in. Jill!
Convenient disconnect.
Chris, this is it.
Let's give it a shot.
Funny pun, let's give it a shot. Because it's gonna be injected. Shut up.
Exactly. The plane can't get shot down. If it does, it'll initiate a biohazard.
It's just like Jill said. He's planning to spread this virus worldwide.
Anyways.
Warning. Fire detected in the engine room. Warning. Sealing off area.
I do like that camera transition though. That is pretty cool. How it spins.
Warning. Sealing off area with secondary bulkhead. Evacuate the area immediately.
Okay.
Come on!
Okay.
Well, actually, she doesn't need to pick. Okay, she picks it up anyways. Hi. Really?
Are you okay?
Some very heroic music playing.
Opening secondary bulkhead. Please maintain a safe distance from the bulkhead.
Where did this guy come from? Like, where? Oh, I see. These are very, poorly designed bulkheads if they take that long to... Cool.
Come on! Take it.
Okay,
Come on!
okay.
Really? She can't take... Okay. Who's shooting now? From whence to... Stop running away! Where are you guys coming from? There was like none of you in here, and suddenly there's a bunch. Get out of here! Stupid. Spam of gun enemies.
Stop right there, criminal scum! Nobody breaks the law on my watch. Confiscating your stolen goods. Now pay your fine, or it's off to jail.
Get down from there. Just running around in a circle trying to beat them all, and they keep running away, so it's like musical chairs here. Oh, I see.
Oh my god!
You're so weird. Stop spawning! There's more still. Oh my goodness. Here. Is that it? I don't think it is.
Sheva! Hurry! Sheva! Come on! Sheva!
Okay.
Oh no. That's why I brought the electric rounds. So, oh.
We'll never win in a fair fight. We need to fall back and come up with a plan.
Really?
Are you okay?
So Mario Bros is Machine Gun Bros. Do the Mario! Okay.
Take it.
Okay.
Okay, that was a way to do it. Come on. Get over here. Get over here.
You grab it.
Roger.
Alright, we got the key cards. I think that's everything there is here. I know... Okay, so that's for the grenade launcher. We'll go ahead and get that first aid spray. Oh, that guy just... There we go. Anyways.
You grab it.
Roger.
Acid rounds. I don't know what acid rounds are meant for. I think they're just an alternative to flame rounds. I don't know. I've never really looked it up, like looked into it.
Hurry!
Okay.
Shiva, hurry!
Roger.
Hurry!
Roger.
Oh, right.
Something doesn't feel right. I can't explain it.
Yeah, I hear ya. Don't let your guard down for a second.
Your plans are finished, Wesker.
There's no way out this time.
Don't you two ever tire of failing in your mission? You've really become quite an inconvenience for me.
I believe that's where I get all my post the story and self-promotion tab once finished. In the meantime, catch you later. Alright. Very effective against liquor. Okay.
Why are you doing this? What do you accomplish by unleashing Ouroboros?
Every day, humans come one step closer to self-destruction. I'm not destroying the world. I'm saving it.
This guy's lost
This may be our only chance.
it. Do it.
Things are really getting interesting now, eh, Chris? Do you actually think you can defeat me?
Either way, I'm not gonna stop until I'm dead.
Well then, I'll just have to kill you quickly.
Think of now as Emperor Palpatine. Yes.
See you dead.
Alright, I think what I have to do here...
There's no point in hiding.
Shut off the lights. Well, that's not gonna work. Let's see. So I have to get the lights to turn off. I know that. What the fuck are you doing down there, Sheva? God, you suck.
Are you okay?
Fucking waste of a fucking partner. Just let me do it solo. It'd be a lot easier. Like, how do I turn them off? I thought I just... Oh, there's switches. I can't shoot out the lights. No, that'd be too convenient.
advantage of the dark. We might actually hit him.
Okay, shut off the lights. Okay.
You're merely postponing the inevitable.
Thanks, video game, for showing me that he can turn in a circle. Shut off all the lights.
That this planet is overpopulated.
Okay.
Only a handful of humans truly matter. Everyone else is facing so much chaff. So now, I have to separate this chaff from the wheat. And with Ouroboros, I can finally accomplish this.
Oh, what? What?
Your struggle is over!
Alright, I have to go up and reload it now. Dude was about to fucking yeet a fucking aim-9 at me.
Will be chosen by Ouroboros. Only those fit for survival will be allowed to carry their genes into a new age.
And you gotta go up here.
You're the one that's gonna rule this new age, right?
You can't hide from
Yes.
You're finished!
Okay.
I need you to distract Chris. I need a warhead.
Load. Wait, where'd she go? Why'd she go that way? Why? What logic is there? Thanks.
There you are!
Really? Bullshit.
I'll get a rocket.
Where's the launcher? Oh, gotta go this way. Oh, this is so bad. This game really falls apart in the latter half. Like, terribly. Oh, geez, thanks. Yes. Oh, she can just load it herself. How convenient. Really? Okay. And then Sheva just runs away.
Is that all you have?
What are you doing, Sheva? Where is she going? What are you doing?
Every time we shoot, he dodges. Fighting in the shadows might be our only chance.
Then why'd you shoot, Sheva?
Rocket.
Why'd you shoot? Okay. Okay, turn off the light. Like, this part of the boss fight is always, like, a completely suppressed memory for me. I always forget about it just because it's terrible.
Let me clarify something for you, Chris. I don't think of myself as a key.
There we go.
Sheva,
Okay.
do it now! Give him the shot!
There we go. Finally. Okay. God. Terrible part.
Did it work?
I think so.
How did he get his glasses back?
This isn't over, Chris.
Sheva, he's getting away. Hurry!
I don't know what kind of frames he's using for his glasses, but I want them. Those things are fucking durable. Take my hand. Well, that accelerated quickly. Looks like something out of Metal Gear Rising.
Underestimated you, Chris. Save it, Wesker. There's no one left to help you now.
I don't need anyone else. I have Ouroboros. In less than 5 minutes, we'll reach the optimal altitude for missile deployment. Ouroboros will be released into the atmosphere, ensuring complete global saturation.
Complete global saturation. I remember this QTE sequence being awful.
Your feeble attempts only delay the inevitable. The entire world will be infected. A new genesis is at hand, and I will be the creator.
Maybe don't go ah! When you slash at someone. Nice.
I've had enough of your bullshit! You're just another one of Umbrella's leftovers.
You know what we have to do.
All right, I'll go for the override lever. Cover me.
Why is... So something I never understood, why is there just conveniently a volcano here? That's like an awful small chance. There's just conveniently a volcano. Like, it's one thing to say, okay, you crashed into mountains. That's a bit more, that's pretty believable. Crash into a field, believable. Crash into the ocean, believable. And we're just in a straight-up volcano. Not like on the side of it, we're just straight up in the mouth of a volcano and somehow not suffocating and burning to death. Like, if anyone was actually, like, standing in here that close to lava, they'd be actually roasting.
Take it.
Roger.
Our goose would thoroughly be cooked. Alright. It's boulder punching time.
I should have killed you years ago. Chris.
Why did he just lose his shirt?
It's over, Wesker!
Over.
He's got the forbidden pasta.
To die, Chris.
Someone's been playing a little too much Prototype.
Why can't you understand, Chris?
Fall back!
Do you really believe the world is worth saving?
Chris, get to high ground!
Natural selection leaves the survivors stronger and better. Humans have escaped this winnowing for far too long.
Alright, the ground is high. There's the boulder we're gonna punch. Eventually. Oh, it's on its back. Do you have him, Sheva? There we go. Nice. It's over, Anakin! I have the high ground.
Damn you! War, pestilence, wherever you go, everywhere.
Alright, here we go! It's punching time! Push that boulder. Ram, hook, punch it, boulder, punched! Ah, that's so stupid. That's the highlight of this game. That's what this game's all about. Alright, we finished the game. We could just quit right here and we'll be done.
Just hold on, Sheva.
How am I supposed to... Oh, I can't well shoot him when he's yeeting shit at me. Okay. You just headbutt a boulder, yep. And punched it with both fists at once.
The human race requires judgment.
And you're going to judge us? Do you get all your ideas from comic book villains?
I mean, this is a Capcom game. Every character in it is a comic book villain. That's just how Capcom games are. Probably should have picked that up. Oh. Hi. Hi. He's got an arm. Where did this thing go? Well, that's not any time to aim. There we go. I don't know, sometimes people, even comic book writers, will be like, nah, that's just too crazy. Depends on how well they're paid. Easy. And that, ladies and gents, is why you save your magnum ammo. Just get through this boss fight as quick as possible. Competent companion. Not ideal. You shoot these out of a helicopter without clear. The backblast would really damage the helicopter.
Time's up, you son of a bitch.
Now, wouldn't the backblast from these, like, just completely destroy the roof of the helicopter? And speaking of, how is this helicopter even flying over the lava in the first place? Because wouldn't the air be way too thin? Or not enough oxygen for the combustion to occur? I don't know. I don't know. The whole volcano sequence makes no sense. But Resident Evil's always kind of been a campy B-movie series, so...
More and more,
it's just this one more so than most.
For a future without fear? Yeah, it's worth it.
Alright, that's the end of the game. The helicopter dies in the sun. It just went straight out to outer space and flew right into the sun. Trust me, I saw it with my own eyes. Applause, applause. Now, what I'm probably gonna do, let's see if I can do this. Can I do this? Well, there's no audio, but the credits are still scrolling. While the credits are scrolling, I need to change some settings on Twitch because I'm going to swap over to, reading and whatnot, because we're going to continue the story. We're going to be reading, where we left off last time. Where I was supposed to read on Sunday, but wasn't able to, so we're going to be continuing reading that. Let me go ahead and get that all set up, and what have you. Now, the game does have some, post-game unlockables and stuff like that. Like, there is New Game Plus, and you can get, like, if you fully upgrade a weapon and get enough points, and that's what those score points are for completing levels. If you get enough of those, you can buy, like, unlimited ammo for them. It's pretty cool. So the game does, I will give credit where it's due, this game does have a lot of replay value, a lot of unlockables, which is pretty cool. Pretty cool. I do like that. So, the not enough oxygen is not a problem while rising air mixes around. Even still hot and thin, jet turbine compresses usable levels with ease. Then why is it that helicopters generally do not, or are kind of forbidden to fly over volcanoes? Because what I've always heard is that if you fly a helicopter over volcano caldera, it will not end well. Like, they'll just sink. Like, I remember watching a documentary about it a while back. Like, specifically about the Hawaiian volcano. There's gotta be a different reason there. I always figured it was just the hot air or lack of oxygen, but I don't know what it is then, if that's not it. Okay, let me turn these off. Basically, I'm just turning off sound alerts and whatnot, because those would be disruptive during reading. Very disruptive. And I have way too many sound alerts, holy shit. More fluctuation, air density, and random gusts. Ah, okay. Something. Okay, so we got all that off. Okay, then go to here. Just go ahead and... There, okay. That should work. Probably might bug things out on the user end, but a refresh of the page. And now the dogs are going crazy right as I'm about to swap to reading, which is really annoying. In general, helis can't glide anywhere. If something happens to losing an engine can easily lead to fatal accidents. Yeah, I mean, the best they can do is auto-rotate, but they need... There's only specific conditions where that works right. Volcanic ash is also super bad for engines. That makes a lot more sense. I don't know why I didn't think of that. Like, yeah, I don't think you'd want ash in any engine, to be fair. Okay. How'd we do overall? Hey, we got an S overall. Or that's just 6-3. Accuracy was only 64%. I don't believe it. Actually, I do. Now that I think about it, with Wesker dodging every fucking shot. Okay. Well, let me see here. Let me see. Bonus features. Bonus. Oh, I have a lot of points. So you can get, like, a bunch of... You can get infinite ammo for my default handgun, drugging off SVD ammo. Like, sure. Oh, yeah, you have to get enough, BSAA stuff as well. Something's on in the smog. Yeah. It's just volcanic air in general is just not good to be around. Yeah, you can... Yep. Unfortunately, there's no such thing as a full new game in this. All saves are, like, stored online. If you try to bork that and corrupt that, it doesn't work. So let's, really? Ow, that's loud. Ow. Okay, so now we're gonna swap categories here to, or swap stream information here. I'm gonna get to story reading. I hate that I have to do this and move it over and whatnot. Let me turn all that off. No, I don't want to see all this information. Do not show me that stuff. That data is stuff that's not good to see. Let's see. Category. Oh my goodness. Stupid dogs. Yappy, squealy little rats. Let's see. I'll just backspace this and there we go. Okay, let's throw up window capture here. Wow, that looks weird. Boink. And then do this with a taskbar, which will pop it down a little bit. Why is it all the way to the left? Oh, here we go. Do this. We'll zoom it in a little bit. Maybe here. And we were on, last time, we finished, Chapter 1 of Part 2. Lurk. Alright. Here, let me do this right quick. So, what happened last time? So the big battle ended, unfortunately, although Lacta wanted the battle to end, although Locta wanted a peaceful resolution to them, to the UCS and the Clan Fayar meeting. That did not happen because Scream was an idiot. Locta ended up killing Scream, basically cutting off both his arms and then severing his head after delivering a final fuck you to him. Afterwards, he started his, and then like by the time part 1 starts, 2 weeks have about 2 weeks have passed, and Locta's been training under Algoris, learning, you know, that sort of thing, like what he can do, all this mystical bullshit, which the universe has, or the galaxy has kind of forgotten. Turns out to be real and whatnot, and he's practicing that. However, through his meditations, he find out that Krepto is actually still alive. Krepto, who crashed his ship into the battlefield in basically a guilt-driven, suicidal, I hate everything. Well, not really I hate everything, but it was just things were not good, and he was basically lost all hope, and Locta ended up finding him. He was almost starving and rather crazy, but after seeing him, or after seeing Krepto's, or after Krepto saw Locta and came to his senses, they realized, like, huh, that's actually him. Krepto was brought back to the estate that Locta and Algoris is staying at, and Algoris and Krepto have a conversation, and Krepto realizes that, hey, maybe these Clan Fayar aren't actually all that bad. And so now, they're going to try to look for a way to get back to Chelor, because they need to contact the Mystics there in order to begin the next stage of the plan, in order to save the galaxy, and therefore the whole universe, from the incoming demonic incursion. Okay. All right, so let's get to it then. Chapter 2: Reminiscence and Regret. Atop the jet cycle under the shroud of night, Locta and Krepto rode down the mountain path through the forest with its bright headlamp lighting their way into the battle-scarred valley below. Still, after 2 weeks, the smoldering ruins of the Teleclix's crash site glowed a warm red from within its contorted hull. The very grass was awash with a coat of silver and gold, dried Clepathian blood, and all around were several of the grounded transport ships that failed to escape, making for a grisly scene to behold. Though all the remains of those who perished fighting had been taken and given a burial in a far-off valley, the very land still cried out in silent echoes of the pain wrought here. It was this place where Locta sealed his future, and forever would it haunt him how it was not in peace, but in blood. He looked over his shoulder at Krepto, who stared endlessly at the crashed supercarrier embedded in the earth. Locta slowed the jet cycle down, coming to a halt upon the battlefield. Krepto dismounted without a word, staring at the smoking, twisted hulk of the ship before him under Purgatory's moonless skies. Locta got off the jet cycle as well, fearing for his friend, and stood at his side, staring at the wrecked ship. He didn't quite understand Krepto's fixation on it in particular, but what he did understand was the sense of loss spelling itself out upon his friend's face as clear as day. "Hey, Krepto," Locta said gently. "Do you need a moment?" Krepto closed his eyes and breathed deeply before nodding slowly. "Please, and thank you." Locta nodded, giving Krepto a sympathetic pat on his shoulder before turning and leaving Krepto alone. As Locta proceeded across the ravaged battlefield to one of the transports, he kept glancing over his shoulder back at his friend, and Krepto just stood stiff as stone the whole time. He knew how much Krepto always aspired to follow in his father's footsteps, and how all of it was suddenly thrown away, scattered and broken like the ship laying before him, dead like those who perished within it. Locta could tell that he was now experiencing the very same coldness Locta had survived with up until recently. Purposelessness, loss, a bleak void of unreasonable existence. It was so bitterly ironic, Locta thought, how he once leaned so heavily on Krepto's shoulders, but now it was Krepto who leaned upon his. Locta worried for him, but not for his grief. He knew Krepto was strong and that he would carry on where Locta would have otherwise failed, but in that direction was where Locta's concern lied. Unlike Krepto, Locta had very little care for the UCS and all its oppressive, morally bankrupt corruption, but by the tattered uniform he wore alone, Krepto was a model patriot. Even if he hated all it had become, Krepto still believed in the core principles the UCS was founded upon. These were principles of liberty, a government ruled not by kings or emperors, but by the people themselves. It worked for a time, but as was the nature of mortals ruling themselves without a map or compass, they walked astray and wandered into darkness. They were given inches, but they took miles of the sinful road they stood blindly before Hell's gates. Or sinful road until they stood blindly before Hell's gates. Locke dreaded to think what could what could come between him and Crypto if this road he traveled diverged too far from the crumbling pavement of the UCS, necessitating the paving of a new path in its place, a path of light. The UCS foundation was on the people ruling, the Carpathian Empire's foundation was on a lineage of royal blood, but what Locke believed the Carpathians really needed was a foundation not in the hands of mortals at all. Mortals leading themselves were blind leading the blind. Carpathians, even though biologically immortal, did not live forever. Accidents happened, be it simple slipping and falling or starship collisions. The laws of nature still kept them in balance. Because knowledge and wisdom vanished as mortal lives faded, so it gave wide berth for mistakes of the past to return. Thus corruption fed on the weakened souls of subsequent generations. What Carpathians, perhaps even the whole universe, needed was a foundation that would not change or break under the sands of time and mortal lusts. It needed a sovereignty, which was eternal, firm, and unyielding. After all, Locke learned in such a short time, he saw what they needed was a foundation of ever-shining faith, ever-present truth. Alas, such a foundation alone was nothing without those to enforce it, but who? Who could possibly uphold the virtues of the Creator, being an incorruptible source of leadership and wisdom forever? Perhaps it was part of Locke's destiny to find them along the way, to set the stage for their coming, he thought. It was evident Locke would lead for a time until that Messiah came, but he hoped it would not be for any lengthy period. For all that Locke did know, for all that Locke did not know, what he did know was that he was no king or emperor. As always, Locke let himself be guided by his faith and instinct, and stuck to the things he learned and did know. Of these few and simple things, he knew where to find a Carpathian ship's ID chip. With a mighty tug, Locke pulled open the rear hatch of one of the grounded transport ships via a manual override lever. Inside the ship smelled of musty dirt, the ship as dead as its crew. These armored transports weren't meant for long-term missions, being cheap and replaceable. As Locke ignited his sword in magical flame and stepped inside, it certainly showed with how quickly it had fallen into disrepair. He stepped through the main hold towards the back to an access ladder leading into the crew compartment. With his sword at his hip, as the magical flame did not burn him, he ascended up to the sealed hatch. He pulled a lock lever and turned the wheel to release the airtight seal to open the hatch, and Locke then found himself entering a narrow crawlspace along the ship's spine towards the cockpit. He tumbled over into the much more spacious cockpit, and upon standing up, Locke approached the forward control panels. He knelt down and reached under them, feeling for a small sort of latch. Once he found it, he pulled at it, and the panel opened. After that, it was a simple matter of reaching in the small slot and pinching out the small ID card. After he felt it fall into his hands, he stood up and smirked at the card in his palm. Success. Not wishing to crawl back through the narrow space, Locke looked around the cockpit for the canopy ejection lever. Once he found the red knob near the pilot's seat, he pulled on it, and with a loud pop, the powered-down view screen was blown off and back over the ship. He heard the sounds of Purgatory's nocturnal creatures and could see all around him as he stood in the now open cockpit. More importantly, he could see Crypto kneeling near the hull of the Teleclix as if longing to be one with the dead who once littered this valley. Locke gasped slightly, leaping out of the cockpit and beginning his way over to Crypto. Crypto heard Locke's steps approaching through the grass, but did not look up at him. Locke stood at his side, looking at the same panel his friend stared at, illuminated by the jet cycle's headlamp. It was a small, charred plate of outer hull armor reading UCS-SCJ4 1083 Teleclix. It was the name of my birth planet, you know, Crypto finally spoke, his tone flat and low. Teleclix, a small factory world at the outer edge of the galaxy where my mother used to make woodcrafting supplies for a living. That was until I came along and, at the suggestion of my father, we moved to Cellor shortly after, he said. There was a long pause of silence before Crypto spoke again. I wonder what they're doing now. Do they think I'm dead? Are they crying about me? How badly have I hurt them? He then looked up at Locke to his left. I know it's a crude thing to say, but in some ways, you're lucky to have a father no longer. At least you don't have to worry about failing him anymore. With a slight sigh, Locke knelt down beside Crypto. On the contrary, there hasn't gone a day when he hasn't crossed my mind. It's almost like he's still here, and I sometimes wonder what he'd think of me now after what I've become. Locke looked at his own hands. I know I'm not you. Not in many ways, but in some ways I now feel the same, said Crypto, looking at Locke. I think now I finally understand why you were so bitter and brooding not so long ago. I told the rest of the fleet to tell the others I'm dead, and because of that I can never truly go back to them. I'm lost. Crypto then returned his stare back at the ship before him. You know what I felt when I heard you speak to the others just before that battle began? I felt like I betrayed you, and that you would hate us all after what Scream did. All I ever wanted was to serve our people, Lockta finished his statement. I know, Crypto, and maybe we still can. Can you promise me that? Asked Crypto, looking straight into his eyes as he did over a year ago when they were so naive on their way to their graduation, those last hours before all of this madness was sent into motion. Can you, as the friend I knew, promise me that whatever it is we do, it will be for the good of the Clepathian people? Hesitating for a brief moment, Lockta nodded and answered, Yes. I know you believe in the Creator, and now I believe in him as well. I believe he will make the things right in the end, for he is justice. He is truth. But why do you believe? Asked Crypto. With a slight, simple smile, Lockta answered, Because without it, I am nothing. Without faith, I'm lost. I own nothing in this universe. All that I once had has been given up, because I don't live for this universe. I don't fight for this universe. I fight for the universe to come. The universe to come. Right. Crypto muttered and looked down, seeming so full of doubt and remorse. To him, Lockta's words seemed too simple, too hollow. He had changed indeed. Every word, every movement, every action seemed to flow from Lockta as light as a feather in the wind. There's a float tool in chat, by the way. In a way, he envied Lockta, wishing he could be so certain and trusting of the future, but as events kept coming now, the faith and hope he once held kept falling away. The simple reality he once knew was quickly becoming little more than a memory of a delusion, but he wasn't ready to leave it behind. He didn't want this reality of magic, angels, and demons, this vast unknown where he was so small and uncertainty was at every turn. He just wanted life to be simple again. However, he didn't want to make mention of it to Lockta. Lockta said it himself. He fought for this new reality, whereas Crypto wanted to keep the universe as he knew. It was flawed, yes, but those flaws could surely be fixed without such radical changes. Couldn't they? Was he now the naive one in his hope to fix the Clepathian people without bringing heaven and hell into the universe, just like he was naive in his hope to keep Lockta away from the Clan Fayar? Perhaps he was, but like Lockta before him, all he had now was a sliver of hope that this future would be one worth embracing. At this point, he'd hold his tongue until that was proven. The only thing certain was that he'd never raise his hand against another Clepathian again, no matter what Lockta or anyone else thought the Creator said. Lockta took the chip from where it was tucked in his belt and held it out for Crypto to see. Well, if we're done here, I got the chip. Chip? Oh, right. Crypto palmed his face. I almost forgot. Sorry. Lockta chuckled. It's been a long day, hasn't it? He stood up, Crypto standing as well. Now, we just need to find a ship. I think I know where to get one, Lockta said as he mounted atop the jet cycle, nodding towards the glowing city on the dark horizon. Crypto mounted as well, and with a rev of the throttle, they sped off through the valley towards the city. Crypto was oddly silent, reminding Lockta of himself not but a few weeks ago. Crypto's previous questions managed to bring up past feelings in Lockta he nearly forgot. He remembered the day his father died, the echo of pain still in every beat of his heart like a permanent scar, but now that thought begged another question. If the Clan Fayar did not kill his father, then who did? If the Clan Fayar said it was their common adversaries, the demons, but Algoris also said they had not yet begun to manifest physically, so how could that be? Perhaps they achieved it in another way. Perhaps his father's assassination was carried out by those who wished to replace him. A shiver raced down Lockta's spine. Could Kel'Thuzes be responsible for his death? If so, then how is it that Lockta did not raise any sort of suspicion? How did it all happen so quickly? Swiftly. Slow down. Lockta still knew very little about the adversaries he faced. Algoris was probably right. Lockta wasn't ready, and yet now he was forced to go right back into the heartland of the workers of evil. His enemies were clever, much more so than him, and Lockta couldn't help but feel as if he were falling into a trap. To make matters worse, it was a trap he could not step away from. If he waited until he was ready, then Crypto's warning could become reality, and there would be nothing the Clan Fayar could do to resist a full onslaught. Now it was Lockta who was beginning to fear and doubt as he truly considered the monumental task ahead of him. Who was he to face up to the might of hell? Who was he to lead his people away from sin when he knew so little? The way Algora spoke of the past incarnations made Locke feel so small and weak by comparison. The Zealot was a wise leader, a master tactician, and a powerful combatant. The Repentant, though little was known about him in this day and age, was said to possess such great power that he conquered the entire world when the Clepathians were little more than sparse warring tribes without a developed written language. All of these things Locke couldn't even hold a candle to. Though his form was changed, and though the light sang within him, very little had changed within Locke outside of faith in the Creator. Algoris indeed said that Locke would not grow through teaching alone, but through the events along the journey. Though it was a comforting thought at first, now he could only begin to wonder what fear and what trials lied ahead. He was not ready, but perhaps that was the point. Locke gulped, took a deep breath, and sighed with worry for what the future had in store for him. He already felt, deep in his gut, that the battle of purgatory was only the beginning, and far from the worst to come. Though there was a cry of fear within him to turn back, Locke kept looking forward into the unknown, relying on his faith as his guide. He revved the jet cycle even faster, making quick pace across the grassy valley towards the city until finally they were at the gates. The gates slid open upon detecting Locke, and he drove through the lamplit streets at a much slower pace. Even though it was still quite busy, the city was much quieter at night. As Locke drove along, catching the attention of many Clonfeyar who were still not quite used to seeing the alien creature roaming this world, he occasionally looked back at Crypto. He had been so quiet that Locke had sometimes worried if he had fallen off, but no, he was simply silent. Still, he was rather ragged and thin, and Locke believed it was by time he did something about it. With a turn of the handlebars controlling the forward repulsor rudder, Locke turned towards one of the local diners still serving at these hours. Crypto didn't understand when Locke parked the cycle out front of it and dismounted. "What are you doing?" "Just stay here. I'll be back in a second," Locke assured as he walked alone into the diner. Crypto watched in confusion as Locke disappeared inside for a few minutes, until he appeared again with a paper bag in his hand. Upon returning, a mouth-watering, savory scent graced Crypto's little black nose. Locke reached in and pulled out a couple hot sandwiches wrapped in paper, handing them to Crypto. Curiously, Crypto unwrapped them, but wasn't quite sure what it was. Locke could see the confusion on his friend's face and told him what it was. "Go on, try it. It's kind of like a fried bird sandwich." Trusting Locke's words, Crypto opened his mouth and took a bite of the bread-wrapped meat, tangy sauce, and some leafy sort of vegetable. He blinked in surprise at it. This is pretty good," he said with his mouth half full. "I suppose anything would be after have you been living off of the forest," chuckled Locke. "No gold or silver, so Clepathians couldn't live off of it forever without getting anemic, but it's far better than what you've been eating, I'm certain." Locke crumpled up the bag and tossed it into a nearby receptacle, waiting for Crypto to finish his meal. Crypto noticed that Locke didn't get anything for himself. "You aren't hungry?" "No," Locke shook his head. "In fact, I don't really need to eat anymore. I can, but you see..." Locke looked over his shoulder at his large saurian-like tail as he wiggled it. "Apparently, because of this oversized thing, I don't even have a way to, get rid of waste." Crypto laughed at the explanation as he finished his meal. "So what, does it just get stuck inside of you?" "No, it just, well, disappears, I guess? I don't really know." Locke shrugged. "Seems there's a lot of things I still don't know about myself." Crypto nodded. "You're right in more ways than you know. I suppose that teacher of yours, Algoris, explained it as well?" "Yeah, unfortunately. I can't be told, but have to discover it myself," said Locke with a disappointed sigh and roll of his eyes. "And apparently, only a few others are supposed to know as well. The Mystics and a few of the Clonfeyar higher-ups. Mystics probably ain't gonna be too happy that I know things I shouldn't." Crypto folded his arms and looked to the ground. "But we'll see soon enough. Thanks, Locke." Locke mounted the jet cycle again. "For what?" "For the food. You really didn't need to," said Crypto. Locke smiled back at him. "Crypto, you've been there for me so many times. It's only right that I return the favor." Hold on a minute. Okay, sorry about that. Dogs being way too rowdy. It's always when I'm reading when they do that. I hate it. Hold on, spaceport. Hold on, the spaceport's just around the corner of the next street. Krepto held tightly to the safety handles as Lokta started driving again. A warm fire lit inside Lokta to see Krepto smile again, to have his trust again. All this time, Lokta worried that how much he had changed may have put off Krepto, but perhaps he'd learned that no matter what Lokta was or looked like, he was still the same person. He was still the same being who went through life on trust and instinct. But maybe that would not always be the case. There was still a long road ahead, and much for Lokta to learn. He drove down the street and made a left onto a long road leading to rows of large, open-air and spacecraft hangars. Lokta drove alongside them until he found a small office fixated in front of them. Within it was a lone Clonfear reclined and asleep in a chair with their feet propped up on the desk. Lokta parked the jet cycle nearby before he and Krepto got off and approached the office. Lokta cleared his throat and spoke up as to wake its sleeping occupant. Ahem! Hello? The snoozing Clonfear didn't so much as stir, but Lokta had an idea. His clawed fingers were just long enough for him to reach in through the window and plug the nostrils of the Clonfear's beak-like nose. The Clonfear snorted and sputtered before grunting and waking up in a coughing fit. What's the big idea? He shouted. Are you the dockmaster of the spaceport? Lokta asked with a slight smirk at the Clonfear's sudden flailing. The Clonfear, however, was not amused. Oh, it's you! The big-eared, flat-footed, fur-covered rat who looks like he's leaped right out of a cartoon that we're all supposed to welcome and treat like one of us. Make use of those hideously oversized ears, and listen here, you furry thing. You may be the next incarnation, but this is my dock, he spat. Lokta recoiled defensively, taking a step back. Okay. I understand. No disrespect intended, but I'm in need of a ship. One capable of cloaking and carrying two. Two? The dockmaster blinked, then saw Krepto standing behind him. Oh, great. First there's one, then two, and next thing you know there's so many they start shedding so much that the roads become a carpet. He muttered to himself. Oh, that was supposed to be muttered, whatever. He muttered to himself, not knowing the large ears of Lokta and Krepto made every word of it easier to hear. The dockmaster sighed and then stood up, opening the back door to the office. All right, fuzzballs, follow me, and don't cough up any hairballs along the way. Lokta blinked in confusion, stammering as he spoke with his finger held up. But we don't, never mind. He nodded back at Krepto for him to follow as the dockmaster led them towards one of the further hangars, holding a lantern up to the light along the way. Upon reaching the second to last hangar, the dockmaster felt for a switch on the wall and turned on the hangar lights, and what Lokta and Krepto saw awaiting them was perhaps the ugliest ship they had ever had the displeasure of looking at in their entire lives. What in the... Lokta exclaimed in revulsion. It was a faded, dirty white with spots of rust and peeled paint, sitting lopsided on its broken, overburdened landing struts like an obese cow with tiny legs. Many of its outer panels were missing, with exposed wires haphazardly dangling out of them, the rusted conduit pipes visible beneath, and altogether was shaped like some blocky, fat whale of a ship. Aerodynamics were clearly not in the vocabulary of its designer. It was an insult to every sense of aesthetic merit. Here's your ship. Take it or leave it. The dockmaster folded his arms and turned his snout to the sky. Krepto scratched his head at the sorry excuse for a ship. The light years different from the sleek and elegant Clepathian designs. This thing looks like a death trap to walk under, let alone try flying it. Are you trying to kill us? I took her out for a spin just a month ago and she ran fine, said the dockmaster with a rap of his knuckles against its battered hull. She's old and ain't gonna outrun anything, but she's sturdier than she looks, and probably the only ship here a Clepathian could pilot. Your kind ain't got the reflexes we Clonfear do, with all your vessels being mostly automated. We'd like a more direct touch with our ships. Lokta rubbed his chin skeptically as he looked up at the cockpit of the ship. What about the cloak? Works just fine, nodded the dockmaster. Krepto shook his head and scoffed at Lokta. You're not seriously considering taking this back to Cellor, are you? It's not like we're given a choice, are we, dockmaster? Lokta sighed, not liking the idea either. The dockmaster shook his head. Nope. Other ships are already claimed or owned. This is the only ship I can loan. He then tilted his head with a slight smirk at Lokta. Have a little faith, will ya? You are the faithful, after all. Lokta looked at Krepto, both gulping in a shared sense of uncertainty, and then looked at the dockmaster. All right, I'll take your word for it. The dockmaster smiled before pulling open the boarding ramp and gesturing them in. Krepto felt a knot twist in his gut as he walked towards it. This is not gonna end well, he groaned to himself before following Locke aboard. Locke closed the boarding ramp behind them, turning on the flickering lights within. Their heads nearly bumped against the ceiling of the cramped interior, with the main corridor having only enough space for the width of one. At one of the end of the corridor, the cockpit was visible, and the both of them made their way to it one after the other. There were seats for a pilot, co-pilot, and 2 passengers. The seats were fairly large for a Clonfiar vessel, looking as if they were meant to seat a Clopathian or some other plantigrade creature. Judging by the holes and shoddy welding in the floor paneling beneath them, these were not the original seats. Curiously, Locke sat at the co-pilot's seat and turned the ship's main power on. Just how old is this rust bucket? He questioned as the ship groaned to life. After a moment of figuring out how to use its internal computer, he pulled up the ship's records and did a double take at what he saw. What? No way! The ship's a relic! Wasn't that obvious? Krepto remarked as he sat at the pilot's seat and began to familiarize himself with the controls. No, look here! Locke pointed at a screen on the middle console, and Krepto, too, almost couldn't believe what he saw. There were logs in the ship written in an older Kalori dialect, dated in years headed with CE, the Clopathian Empire. He and Locke looked at each other for a moment with mouths agape and eyes wide, stunned at how this very ship was once flown by ancient ancestors of Clopathians alive today. This must have been one of the ships during the Clopathian pilgrimage long ago, said Locke as he scrolled through one of the logs. Looks like it belonged to a Clopathian mystic and our Clonfiar student as a personal explorer ship. If this ship could speak, I can only imagine what kind of stories it had to tell. There's a Dawn fan in chat if anyone wants it. Krepto shrugged as he studied the controls, the old Kalori dialect labeling them difficult, yet not impossible to understand. Maybe the mystics on Chelor will know, or maybe they won't say much at all. That's quite a maybe, as we'll be the first non-mystics to visit them in I don't know how long, said Locke with a daydreaming gaze into the air. This is kind of exciting, he smiled giddily. Krepto smirked at him as he began the launch sequence of the ship. Hold your Laelbees. We still have to get there without being blasted to bits first. You got that ID chip? Right here. Locke held it out in his hand. Go ahead and plug it into that port up there. Krepto nodded towards the wall. Towards the wall to the right of Locke, unable to take his hands off the yoke as he began to fly the ship out of the hangar and over the city. He slowly accelerated the ship, the rattling vibrations throughout the hull causing him to grimace in the anxiety that it could fall apart at any moment. It was a miracle it didn't. To his dismay, however, the ship only moved at a maximum speed of Mach 1.5 in high atmosphere, and probably not much faster in vacuum. He pulled back on the stiff yoke with a squeak of its hinges, nosing the ship up to the sky. After a few minutes, they finally left the atmosphere of purgatory behind for the black, twinkling void of space. Alright, where's the warp portal generator? Ah! Oh, ew. Krepto grumbled in disgust as he realized the warp portal generator was one of the earliest iterations of it, right when black hole drives were beginning to be phased out. Oh, there shouldn't be an extra space there. There we go. Well, this trip may take a good couple hours. The ancient warp portals weren't as short and precise as the ones we have now, he said, flipping a few switches and inputting the coordinates. Straight to Chelor, huh? Locke said, noticing that the six sets of numbers Krepto put into the navigation console. That way, at least if we're caught, we'll be close, Krepto said before the warp portal drive revved up to full power, tearing open a hole in space-time right before the vessel. Krepto took the ship inside and, within moments, they left Purgatory behind on their mission to find the Mystics and rally the few faithful left among the Clopathians. Though it was a simple task in words, Locke somehow knew that what lied ahead wouldn't be easy. The winds of destiny blew within him at the behest of the Creator, and though the ship set sail for a world most familiar to him, he set sail once again to shores unknown. Soon came the real test, not just of Locke's faith, but of Krepto's as well. Alright, so that was Chapter 2. Krepto and Locke basically catching up a little bit, and finding a ship with a very rude dockmaster. The ship old and barely functional and held together. We'll see how it holds together in the next chapter. Let me take a sip of coffee here. Catch my breath a little bit. Or maybe we won't see how it holds together in the next chapter, because the next chapter is a bit of a detour, I believe. Yeah, okay. Chapter 3, Hall of the Faceless King. Storm clouds wept cold tears upon Chelor's sprawl, streaming down the large window at the rear of the first senator's office within the Capitol building. Once the royal chambers of the Emperor, now little more than a glorified office. Within a leather high-backed chair sat the first senator himself, Keltethis, who stared out the large window towards Northern City as the rain from the storm pattered against the thick one-way glass. As if growling at him while they wept, a low thunder rolled out from the clouds, but he defied them with the roof over his head. It was not his first act of defiance, neither his last. Keltethis turned about in his chair to look at the picture still sitting on the desk of the previous first senator's son, Skyreth and Lacta. No change came without sacrifice, he thought to himself, but it was growing more and more apparent that he had not yet sacrificed enough. His peace and quiet was soon interrupted by the buzzing of the door alarm. "Enter," Keltethis said with one visible eye fixated on the door. The door slid open with a slight hiss, and a very wealthy-looking Clepathian waltzed inside with his decorated cane in hand, two burly bodyguards entering with him at his flanks. Keltethis immediately recognized the figure by his jet-black suit and top hat. "Ah, Mr. Lang Hess. What is it you need this time?" "Greetings, Keltethis," stated Lang Hess with a snide and snobbish tone. "I have noticed you have begun redirecting vital resources away from my factories. Ores and raw gemstones from the Lirkun mining worlds have been seized, claiming that government resources need them." "Yes, you are correct." Keltethis leaned back in his chair and tilted his head. "What of it?" Lang Hess pursed his lips, holding back his annoyance as he spoke again. "Without resources, my factories cannot provide as much fine jewelry. Thus, I lose profits as I am forced to raise prices, leaving me unable to compete with my competitors in the Mayrin quarter." Keltethis eyed him from head to toe and back again, observing his expensive, finely tailored suit, his gem-socketed rings upon his fingers, and circlets around the roots of his ears. Keltethis leaned forward on the desk and peered up at him without a shred of sympathy in its cold, cyclopean gaze. "I think you'll survive just fine, Mr. Lang Hess," he muttered just above a whisper. "Survive?" Lang Hess exploded. "People like me are what makes this galaxy spin round. I urge you to reconsider." Keltethis leaned back, cradling the back of his head in his hands as he swiveled his chair's back to Lang Hess, facing the rear window. "I've considered and reconsidered it. Your concern is noted, but not one I particularly care about." Lang Hess scowled in shock at the response. "Ah! How dare you! I will make certain this affront does not go unreconciled. You will do no such thing." Keltethis swiveled his chair back around to face him again, peering up at Lang Hess. "You will leave my office, crawl back to the Lirkun quarter like the repugnant worm you are, and live as if this conversation never happened." Lang Hess shook his head and sneered. No, I don't think I will. Guards!" Keltethis quickly stood up from his chair as Lang Hess mercenary guards marched towards him, but then Keltethis simply holding his right hand up, the guards halted in their tracks. They blinked in a sudden shock as they grasped at their chests, then collapsed to the floor as their lungs were sent into painful, uncontrollable spasms. "What kind of..." Lang Hess gasped back at his guards in horror, then at Keltethis. Okay, I'll leave, but I will not forget this," he stammered as he backpedaled towards the door. "Just remember that I will know who really lies behind that mask of yours, and don't think for a second I won't use it against you." Lang Hess' diaphragm suddenly seized up. He could not breathe, let alone speak. A burning pain sharply arose within him, coursing like a searing blade through his nerves. He doubled over to his hands and knees, prostrating pathetically before Keltethis, who stared at him like a slave before a master. "As I said, Lang Hess," his words shot like bullets through his chest, "you will leave, and you will not say a word." Keltethis stepped around his desk and towards the pathetic Lang Hess, his hand still raised as he channeled his dark power over their sins strangling their souls. With greater sin came greater pain, and the sin of greed festered so strong in Lang Hess that Keltethis could practically taste the sweetness of his suffering as the miscreant groveled before him. "And if you so much as think about blackmailing me again, then you will quickly learn that what you are experiencing now is but a merciful warning compared to what I will do to you until the last star burns out. Do I make myself clear?" "Yes, Keltethis," Lang Hess sputtered as Keltethis gave him just enough control to barely speak. "Good," Keltethis nodded, lowering his hand and canceling a spell. "Now leave me be, filthy parasites." Langhess and its guards scurried dizzily to their feet, fleeing out the door without a word. Caltethus put his hands behind his back and sighed, looking back over his shoulder at the picture on the desk behind him, staring at Larta in particular. No change without sacrifice, indeed, he mused to himself. This minor interruption from Langhess may have distracted him for a moment, but soon Caltethus' train of thought was back on its rails. Ever since the defeat at Purgatory, he realized he had underestimated the threat that Larta posed. Even now, he knew that Defiant One was on his way back to Chelor by whispers in his brain from those who granted him the powers he possessed. He still had a deal to fulfill, and Caltethus was always fair. Only recently had he become so efficient with the aid of his benefactors from places deep below the universe. But as their mutual adversaries drew nearer to their goals, he began to see that his efforts alone were not enough. Time was growing short, the hour of glory for the Clepathians was at hand, but Caltethus was not so arrogant as to believe he could defeat his adversaries alone. He began his way out of his office, his eye fixed forward as the calculations ran in his mind. He had work to do. Caltethus proceeded alone to the elevator at the end of the hall, stepping inside and descending to the main floor. When he stepped out, he looked not a single individual in the eye, as they knew better than to stare into his. They learned quickly, and by the corruption in their hearts, they were easy to control in silence. It amused him to think he once suffered the presence of the greedy and power-mad, but now the reins were in the other hand, and his whip was a lashing of their own sin. He too possessed his own sins, but unlike those who stood clear of him now, they gave him power, for he was favored by those who would see allegiance with the Clepathians. He soon came to another elevator on the opposite wall of the main hall, and, after a device on the wall scanned his retina, the elevator to the places below welcomed him. Stepping inside, he pressed a button for the lowest floor. Like many buildings on the rocky northern parts of Chelor's supercontinent, most of the Capitol building was underground. Some of these places held many ancient echoes and secrets of the past, but had been left forgotten for many years. The elevator soon came to a halt, and when its doors opened, all he saw was a long, dark corridor stretched out before him. Sparsely lit by dim lamps along black walls, the only other occupants around the once sacred chamber ahead were the silent figures in armored robes. Like him, they too sought to bring the Clepathians back as a force to be feared in not just the galaxy, but perhaps the whole universe. Like him, they also understood the necessity of sacrifice as marked by their glowing red eyes beneath their hoods. Ever since the pact was made and the power was shifted into his hands, they were hidden away from sight lest they disturb the ignorant, but in time they would not be alone in knowing the power of sin. It was a harsh lesson for them and Caltethus to learn, but the ultimate truth they now knew was that the choice was to control or be controlled. His footsteps echoing through the quiet halls, Caltethus reached the great gate at the end of the corridor, carefully considering what he was about to do. Control or be controlled, he thought over and over. To embrace and master his own sins, rather to be controlled by them, and beyond these gates were the remains of what was perhaps the pinnacle of both the former and the latter. He feared for a moment that he was not yet strong enough to call upon him, but when he looked into his heart of hate and pride, the whispers from far beyond clawed at his back to go further. "Yes, my masters," Caltethus whispered. He held his hand up to the center of the door, pressing a large switch in the middle. With a low rumble of stone and metal, the circular door rolled open, and inside was a pentagonal low-ceiling chamber. It was mostly featureless, but as Caltethus walked inside, he felt as if he stepped into the chilling arms of death. Evil pulsed through the air. His breath became vapor before him, the room being a supernatural cold, and all around him the dark walls were like an ominous mirror to what lied at the center. There was an ancient set of armor on a stand, black as iron and emblazoned with unholy runes of power. Below it was where its former owner's body laid beneath a panel welded shut thousands of years ago. This was the tomb of the Emperor's greatest warrior, one who once came to know the power of all sin in its fullest. He who also knew betrayal at the hands of Lacta. This was the unholy sanctuary of Sulthrasa. Sulthrasa, a name that almost felt like sacrilege to even think, and in that alone was power Caltethus knew well to respect. Once he served as a fierce personal bodyguard to the Emperor, a warrior so fierce they were said to be immortal in a time where years were still numbered. However, Keltethis now knew otherwise. Sulthrasa was a name, each who held it claiming it after slaying the previous owner in a final test. Their teachings passed down from master to student, as students slayed masters since the time when their people were little more than tribes on their now barren and irradiated homeworld. This was far from a flaw, however, for to possess such skill for a mortal, skill that made the UCS greatest warrior look like a tiny child by comparison, was almost inconceivable. It was a strength Keltethis needed now, lest he suffer the same fate leading the Sulthrasa line into the grave before him, forgotten until now. His curiosity nearly boiled over in what powerful secrets Sulthrasa's dark spirit held, secrets he intended to make his own, to use them against Lagta when he arrived. Keltethis closed the door behind him as to not be disturbed, and then sat with his legs crossed before Sulthrasa's remains and ancient armor. Slowly, he unstrapped the mask from his face and laid it down at his side. Just as the icy air filled his lungs unfiltered, all the power and hatred in the room poured into him. Keltethis closed his eyes, bowed his head, and began to meditate. Breathing deep and gently, Keltethis rode upon his hellfire steeds of pride and wrath to the outer fringes of his dark master's domain. The pain of fear swelled in his heart as he entered the realm of sin, but Keltethis did not fall to it. With disciplined absence of thought, only wrath and pride, he turned this painful fear into his key. With it, he unlocked the gates and stepped within. It was here where creatures beyond the physical and flesh roamed and howled, a realm of power Keltethis once thought a mere myth not so long ago. The dangers of journeying to this place were great, however. If he was not careful, he too could become like one of the countless agonized souls lost in its stinging sands and boiling seas of blood forever. Fortunately, he had something the natives of this realm lacked. He had immortal free will. So long as he kept his will strong and boastful, where his spirit traveled would be immune, but keeping his will so strong as to travel all of this realm was mortally impossible. To the luck of Keltethis, he did not need to travel all this realm, but instead called to the one he sought after. Sulthrasa. His spirit pulsed and thought, speaking not just his name in glyph and word only, but in the meaning it carried. Sulthrasa, Sulthrasa, Sulthrasa. He called out to the darkness, pulling that ancient soul of violent fury. Come to me, heed my call. Keltethis' spirit commanded, and soon from the abyss came a terrible specter of 1,000,000,000 deaths marching towards him. Yes, now let our powers be one. Relinquish your secrets to me. The dark spirit heard Keltethis cry out, but when the spirit came closer, Keltethis' thirst was not satiated. The spirit of Sulthrasa lingered before him, glowering down at him as if he were a mere pestering gnat. With a bolt of dread lancing through him like cold lightning, Keltethis knew he committed a grave mistake. Throughout the entire realm was a great quaking, reverberating all the way to the physical universe, back to the tomb where Keltethis sat, dispelling his meditation with its call crumbling through the walls. Unworthy! The dark tomb growled. Keltethis' eyes opened. He quickly grabbed his mask and donned it as he scrambled to his feet. His royal guard, sensing their master was in danger, opened the door and stormed inside with their enchanted pikes in hand. And there they beheld the evil manifesting in the middle of the tomb. Unworthy, weak, pathetic. The tomb roared and growled as the writhing black mass permeated from the remains below, swirling around the cursed armor. The runes etched upon the ancient heavy plates cracked alight with a crimson glow as the dark mask took a ghostly shape of a Clopathian within it. Black fog from the unholy being pouring off the figure. The armor trembled as the chamber continued to rumble, snapping free of the chains restraining them to the stand, until finally, after 25,000 years, Sulthrasa walked among the physical universe once again. Like burning coals straight from the breath of Gehenna, his eyes flickered a light within the black swirling mass shaped like the silhouette of a Clopathian's head above the cursed cuirass, fixating upon Keltethis. Why have you brought me back into this wretched place? Growled Sulthrasa, his echoing voice speaking not through the vibrations of air, but through the blackness in their spirits. Great Sulthrasa, it was not my intention to summon you, Keltethis stammered. Sulthrasa snarled at Keltethis and the guards surrounding him. And yet you did. You sought my power and wisdom, tried to make it your own, he said. I have heard about you, Keltethis, and your weakness disgusts me. Knowing that pleading with such a being would only make him appear weaker in Sulthrasa's eyes, Keltethis stood his ground and snarled back, Enough! I will not be spoken to in such a manner. Such bold words for one as clueless and pathetic as you. Solthrasa extended his shadowy styluses, blades of pure darkness extending from his incorporeal form. But fighting with words is for the meek. Come then, show me you are worthy. Royal Guard, attack! Caltetus commanded the guards around him. With their pikes in hand, they charged at Solthrasa, running to their deaths. Solthrasa's ghostly blades passed through their defenses, leaving a whirl of blackness in their wake as he sliced the heads from the shoulders of two, impaling the chest of another. Caltetus watched in dread as Solthrasa's strikes turned a guard's blood into ice before shattering his body like glass. The last four who barreled down the corridor towards him halted before they could even reach the hellish being, for the dark warrior spirit held up his hand and lifted them in the air. Caltetus turned about and witnessed hellish flames spew forth from their mouths, nostrils, and eye sockets, leaving their corpses to fall to the ground as empty husks torched from the inside out. And now, you. Solthrasa cackled as he marched towards Caltetus over the broken bodies. Caltetus pulled back his sleeves and extended his styluses, but it was all for naught when Solthrasa seemingly vanished and reappeared right before him, his hand like dry ice around his neck. Solthrasa lifted Caltetus by his throat. You dare attempt to steal my power for your own. Truly, you are an idiot, he snarled before throwing Caltetus to the ground. He arose to his hands and knees from the impact. As he arose to his hands and knees from the impact, Caltetus stared up at Solthrasa with his visible eye pleading for mercy in its gaze. A disgusting sight to Solthrasa indeed. You, who makes claims to the imperial throne, thinking he can best me like the last emperor, he spat before kicking Caltetus in his ribs. With a pained yelp, Caltetus rolled over on his side in a fetal position, writhing and coughing up blood. And now you lay there, groveling at my feet in your weakness, unable to best me even in my incomplete form. We may share a common hatred for a common adversary, but what you lack that he possesses is strength. Then maybe we can work together. Caltetus coughed between wheezing breaths. With your prowess and my influence, we can defeat him. Solthrasa folded his arms and shook his head. You still don't understand, and perhaps you never will. Need I remind you that death is not a matter of if, but a matter of when? You too will perish, and if you remain ignorant as you are, you too will suffer as I have. If I do not break you in the domain below, they will. You would do well to close your lips and raise your ears if you wish to claim a throne I will serve, for I understand pride more than you ever will. Caltetus gulped, hobbling upright to his knees as he stared fearfully at Solthrasa. Good. Now listen carefully, for I do not repeat myself. For all that I hated him for, one thing true to Lacta of the past was his strength and skill. Even after I defied his exile placed upon me, when I returned to him and challenged him in his very throne room, he did not cowardly call upon his guards nor flee. He accepted the duel and slew me. He spoke, glowering down at Caltetus. This strength is something you gravely lack. Then, what did you hate him for? Caltetus asked. His reluctance, his nonsensical and wasteful decisions, but most of all was how he granted the throne, or was how he was granted the throne not through heritage, but by the whims of the mystics. Solthrasa spat out the words as if they were poison. His rule was illegitimate. It should have been mine. I watched the fruits of his rule even after my death, seeing the pathetic weakness of this so-called UCS, and now he returns to try and clean up the mess he made. But I know only more ruin will follow. Caltetus shook his head and sputtered from his pained throat before speaking. No, he does not return. This one, he's different. I should hang you by your own intestines for attempting to correct me. But I sense that you are correct. Solthrasa peered deep within him for a moment. Yes, you know him well. I knew him once, said Caltetus, pausing and looking away for a moment before speaking again. But that time has long since gone. He is a fool, stumbling blindly, and if you think I am weak, then you will look upon him and see what true weakness is. But it is only temporary. If he succeeds in the goals of our true adversaries, if he unlocks the knowledge and control of what he truly is, then he will destroy us both. Solthrasa scoffed at Caltetus, shaking his head in smug denial. He will do no such thing, but he will! Look to your masters, and you know it to be true, Caltetus exclaimed. Solthrasa glared at Keltethis for a long, eerie moment before glancing away and sighing. It pains me to confess that you are right. I can see now why they favor you, and why you wear that mask. You murdered him like they once murdered me. You disgust me, and even if I did agree to assist you, I lack the means of doing so. They are going to the consecrated grounds of the mystics, where I cannot tread in my incomplete form. Even if I could bring him no harm without a vessel, for I cannot attack what lies beyond his flesh. Keltethis thought for a moment, his eyes shifting left and right before focusing back on Solthrasa. Our enemy does not travel alone. There is one with him who could make a suitable vessel. And you believe you could persuade him to willingly take up all that I am? Solthrasa squinted at him. If I cannot stop them from reaching the temple, perhaps I can use what they will discover against them. Lacta's companion knows things, but he does not understand them. He travels with him out of fear. Once he sees the truth behind what is laid out for Lacta, all that must be undone, all that he has dedicated his life to preserve, then he will fulfill his place in the scriptures his eyes read but his mind does not comprehend. Keltethis plotted carefully. We will do what our enemies have done unto us, and use their plans against them. Solthrasa tilted his head curiously. And you truly believe this will work, even after your own arrogance blinded you and left you bereft of more than 1,000,000 soldiers? Yes. Pride may have controlled me then, but I have since learned to master it. That is how I reached you, and how I will reach the other. And when I bring the other here for you to inhabit, that is when you shall strike Lacta at his weakest. You will break his body and bring him before me, said Keltethis, smirking cruelly beneath his mask. Solthrasa nodded slowly, and that is when you will crush his spirit in a way that only you could. Perhaps you may yet be worthy of the title you seek, but we shall see. I will trust you for now, but if you fail as you so clumsily did on Purgatory, then you are on your own. I await your arrival with this new vessel of flesh and bone. Until then, leave me be. Solthrasa stepped back towards the armor stand, levitating upon it before his dark form faded from sight, the runes upon its plates ceasing to glow. All was silent now, a deathly quiet like the corpses of the royal guards littering the floor, but Keltethis paid them no mind. Solthrasa had taught him much about strength indeed. He thought as he arose and stepped over their bodies without so much as glancing at them. Excuse me. Now Keltethis had a new plan, and much work to do if he was to be successful. For so long as he had his sight so fixated upon Lacta that it blinded him to the potential threat of his allies, but perhaps this threat could become an ally of his own. Whatever the means necessary, the failure at Purgatory would not be repeated. He would have no second chances, for it was not his adversaries that he feared so much now, but what his allies would do to him if he failed. As he stepped back into the elevator to ascend to the surface levels, he began to wonder if all the sacrifices he made were truly worth it. With him now desperately reaching out to forlorn souls never intended to walk the universe again, he wondered if what he struggled for was truly for the greater benefit of his people. When he looked down at his hands and felt the surge of power coursing through his veins, there was only one answer whispered into his mind. It was an answer he embraced, but with it also came a hint of fear, an echo of the past. Like an incessant itch in his mind he could not rid himself of, that echo still cried out to him, but an echo was all it was, a distant cry of something refusing to be forgotten, a distant sob of someone refusing to die. So, that was a bit of a detour chapter there, giving a Keltethis perspective on the matter and summoning an ancient warrior from the past known as Solthrasa, who some of you may have heard me talk about before, like while doing art streams. But there is Solthrasa's first introduction. And Keltethis getting a bit of a lesson in humility, as well as Lang Hess. Karen act, yes. Lang Hess very much a Karen-type person. Take a breath here. Take a sip. Making lots of ground today as far as reading goes. Chapter 4 Homecoming. The groaning, ancient relic of a ship silently sailed through the pocket realm of warp space, dark blue ribbons of energy swirling around it visible from the cockpit in a dazzling, almost soothing display to the one who sat within. It brought a slight sense of ease to Locta, but with each second passed, the claws of anxiety gradually reached over him from the black abyss beyond the dance of color beyond the view screen. The blackness stared at him like a shadow of the past and things to come, a distant echo of what awaited him. Locta sat alone in the cockpit. Krepto took his opportunity to use the old ship's surprisingly still functioning shower room. They were on their steady way back to Chelor as fast as the old ship could take them, but this was hardly a warm return home. Ironic how the place he once called home was now perhaps the most dangerous place in the galaxy for him to visit, Locta thought, but it was a necessary risk. At least, Locta believed it was necessary. The one he traveled with didn't seem so certain. Locta knew Krepto trusted him, but his trust in that which Locta had faith in remained in question. Now there was always a kind of confusion and apprehension, a reluctance in every word and every step Krepto took. His question to Locta earlier, asking why he believed, now seemed less of a mere curiosity, but more of a hope to find a reason for him to believe as well. With his gloaming, crushed morale and Krepto's defeated gait, Locta wondered if he had answered wrong. What was the right answer then? As always, true to himself, Locta did not know. He simply believed because he chose to. Reason and rationale helped, but for Locta that was not necessary. There's a heat more in chat if anyone wants it. All that was necessary for him was the hope it carried, but for Krepto, it carried no such hope. Krepto always was a scrupulous one, always seeking reason and prying deeper than what his sight alone told him. Now, with both his hopes and his fears for the future shattered, his mind was traumatized. He expected Locta to lead a war against Clopathians, but he did not. He expected death when he crashed upon Chelor, but death did not find him. He expected Locta or the Clan Fayar to find and kill him, but they did not. Krepto's very perceptions of all that was real and myth, truth and lie, were smashed and broken just like the supercarrier embedded into the valley before Ukranor. Whereas Locta found hope and comfort in the fact that the universe was not as his physical senses told him, it brought dread and delirium to Krepto. The extent of Locta's worry was not just to him, but to others who could be like him. So very many still had no idea that things regarded as myth and fantasy were real, that the supernatural was simply natural. It was not new, but was nearly forgotten. Like Krepto, so many of them were quite fond of their lives without magic and mysticism, without angels or demons or a grander cosmic purpose. Some of them enjoyed it even more so than Krepto, indulging in endless base pleasures of the flesh, satisfying their avarice, gluttony, and lust. Others couldn't be bothered to care about anyone or anything else outside of what pertained to them directly. It was a self-contradicting philosophy, to be apathetic in the belief that the physical obstruction was the only obstruction to exist, for there also existed stumbling blocks to the mind and, more importantly, the spirit. Even the smallest, most seemingly harmless act could wreak havoc on the souls of many. One did not need to partake in sin directly to be infected by it. Locta knew this firsthand, and now he could see it in Krepto as well. It all came down to culture and its foundations, as Locta realized in his short time living with the Clan Fayar. Culture was like a stew, where each added ingredient changed its flavor and its nutrition. Adding the wrong ingredients and putting it under the wrong heat ruined it. For the Clopathians, the stew had long since been spoiled bitter. Their traditions and ideals of what once made their culture not only unique to them, but healthy to them in mind and spirit, were removed and replaced through the corrupting claws of apathy. With lack of foundation, care was lost. With lack of care, culture was lost. With lack of culture, animal-like selfishness and sin moved in to fill the void. To heal the Clopathians was a monumental, perhaps even impossible, task indeed. It would have to be torn down to the very foundations. The very way of life this faithless culture of non-culture would have to be destroyed. The only way this could have been possible, Locta thought, was by convincing their hearts against the sins they loved. He sighed doubtfully at the idea, for one may as well try and convince the thirsty to not drink. They were addicted, sick to a point where it was not they who were quarantined, but the few who were not sick, the few who were not mad. So he was called a savior by the Clan Fayar, but Locta was still without a clue on how to even begin saving them. He gasped as a chilling thought suddenly pierced his ruminations. Maybe salvation through them changing simply was not possible. He could not force their will, but as he held out his hand and stared into the conjured flame of light within his palm, he knew that perhaps there was another way, a more desperate way. To sever such great sin from one's soul so forcefully would be like violently ripping a parasite from a host it had grown symbiotic with. Such a force could very well be lethal. Perhaps, however, it was a necessary truth to do so. A terribly painful truth. Locke gulped and looked out the view screen of the ship's cockpit, knowing that he'd find his answers ahead. If it were the mystics who made the Clonfeyar such as Algoris, as wise as they were, then perhaps they would shed greater understanding on what Locke must do, maybe also what he might be. Either of which he still did not know nor understand, both of which he still feared. The shower's door squeaked open, and the footsteps of Krepto approached upon the metal floor. Fell upon Locke's ears. Still drying his ears with a small towel, Krepto entered the cockpit and sat down in the pilot's seat. Krepto tossed the towel aside and strapped himself back in the chair. He looked over the instruments and sighed. He didn't say a word, didn't even look at Locke, but Locke did not need to see his face to know what he was feeling. Krepto didn't even want to be here. Even with all of Locke's ignorance, at least he had an end goal in sight. Krepto had no such goal. He didn't know where he was going, simply following Locke because Locke was the only shred of familiarity he had in this confusing reality. By the way, Locke caught Krepto occasionally staring at his strange hands, armor, and tail. It certainly was not familiarity in appearance. Between the slow trip through warp space projected by the ancient warp portal generator, the cold blackness surrounding the ship, and the silence within, Locke grew restless. Restlessness combined with his worry for Krepto, thus Locke decided to break the ice forming between them. So, Locke started, finding it difficult to bring any topic that was relevant without being touchy. Still on course? He twiddled his thumbs. Krepto nodded down at the navigation console. Yep, just slow is all. Not much more you can expect from this relic. Uh-huh, Locke nodded. Another moment of silence passed before Locke tried to force conversation again. Man, I don't know about you, but I could really go for some Krell bacon and turtle eggs. Krepto raised a brow at him. I thought you didn't eat anymore. Well, I can eat. I just don't need to, Locke explained. Krepto just muttered and nodded silently. Locke bit his tongue, looking down and away from Krepto as to hide his face as he thought. It seemed there really wasn't much that interested Krepto. Locke glanced back at him, not prying into him, but just long enough to see his distant, unfocused eyes staring forward. Whatever was going on in his mind, it held him like glue. Well, some adventure this is, eh? Locke smirked at him. Oh, yeah. Sure, Krepto said flat and apathetically. Mustering his courage after this third attempt, Locke shook his head and sighed. Krepto? He looked at him worriedly. Is something wrong? Krepto seemed surprised for a split second, but then blinked and shook his head with a faint smile. No, everything's fine. We're on course, and the ship hasn't fallen apart yet, so I'd say we're okay. Locke shook his head slightly at Krepto's evasive answer. That's not what I meant. I want to know if you are all right. What, are you coming on to me? I already told you I don't roll that way. Krepto deflected again, through jokes this time. Locke rolled his eyes and exhaled. Krepto, we've already been over this. That's gross, and it's also a sin, as a matter of fact. Anyways, I'm just worried about you, is all. You seem distant. Distant? Krepto didn't understand. Yeah, you've got this 1,000-yard stare, and you've been so quiet, Locke pointed. This isn't the Krepto I remembered. Krepto snorted and rolled his eyes. Yeah, well, you're not really the Locke I remember either. He focused on the console in front of him, if only to avoid looking at Locke. Locke blinked and recoiled at the harsh words, but then shook them off. Krepto, I'm still myself, he exclaimed, but Krepto ignored him. Remember back when we were about 10 years old, and it was the middle of summer when we found a snakeskin beside a river, and you tried to scare me into thinking it was a Shadowback burrowers? Or remember when we got into trouble for drawing on the Skybus window? Who else could possibly share those memories other than us? He questioned with a smile of his lips betraying the worry in his eyes. Krepto continued his silence, daring not to look back at Locke. Locke gulped dismally. Krepto, what's happened to you? What's happened to our friendship? Krepto took a deep breath and let out a long sigh. He wanted to tell him, oh so badly he wanted to tell him why. But he couldn't. I'm just scared is all. Scared for the future. That's okay, I'm pretty scared too, to be honest, said Locta with a sympathetic nod. But we'll get through this just like we always have. Krepto shook his head and turned to face Locta. Locta, we aren't kids anymore. We've grown, and now we step out of the kiddie pool into the ocean. It's either swim or drown, and we're treading dark waters in this mission of yours. Locta was silent as he digested the things Krepto said. Krepto clarified himself. I'm sounding like a broken record, but all I've ever wanted was to serve and protect my people. And now I can't help but feel like I'm working against them. My life feels like it's already over after my damn stupidity at Purgatory. I should have died for that. It feels like I shouldn't even be here. Working against them? Krepto, I'm trying to help them, Locta exclaimed in protest, his hand over his chest in sincerity. Suddenly, Krepto slammed his left palm down hard on the console. Well, what if I don't want your help? He shouted. Locta sat frozen, stunned at Krepto's sudden outburst. What do you mean? With a forced gulp, Krepto shook his head and lowered his tone just above a whisper. Nothing. Never mind. You still don't know. He glared at Locta straight in the eyes with a disdainful scowl for a solid moment before holding his finger up and making himself very clear. The only reason I'm helping you is the chance that maybe I'm wrong. One thing I want to make sure you understand is that I will not raise my hand against another Clepathian ever again, directly or not. If this little crusade of yours means that, then the Locta I knew is truly dead, and our friendship will be over. He gave his ultimatum like a judge sentencing a criminal to death. Locta was left speechless as Krepto continued to stare into him. Krepto blinked once and took a breath, his stern expression softening. Please, prove me wrong. That's all I ask, Krepto begged, turning about and facing forward out the view screen once more. Silence reclaimed its place between them for the several minutes that followed, but now Locta understood Krepto a little more, and saw the fine thread from which their friendship hung. Silently in his mind, Locta prayed to the Creator for their friendship's sake. Too long had it taken him to realize in a way Krepto was like a brother. Too long had it taken him to realize that, in a way, Krepto was almost like a brother he never had, so parallel to him in ways he only saw now. He didn't want to imagine going on the harsh journey ahead alone, but he knew it was a very real possibility. He prayed it never changed from possibility into reality. Oh, neck's getting a little stiff here. Give me a moment. After what felt like an eternity of uncomfortable silence, the navigation console started to blink and beep in a series of high-pitched chirps. What's going on? Locta asked. With his attention fixed on the navigation console, Krepto interpreted the data. Looks like we're coming to the end of the warp portal, if I'm reading this correctly, he said. Activate the cloak as soon as we exit. Got it, Locta nodded, having familiarized himself somewhat with his station. All looks well. ID still beaming a UCS transport signature. Hope this works, or we'll be a pile of burning space dust before the day's done, Krepto commented to himself, flicking a few switches on the roof above and then pressing a couple buttons on the console to his left. The Dockmaster did not lie when he said that the Clanviar preferred to be more in control of their ships. Most of the systems on a Clepathian ship, even an ancient one, would have been as automated as possible for ease of use. Some of that design philosophy made it into this ship at the hands of its previous owners, fortunately, but it was still rather primitive. In a way, Krepto had some respect for the Clanviar. He knew now that Keltethis and other persons of power completely lied about who and what they were, but he still found a reason to despise the Clanviar. Their deception, their drawing of the Clepathians out, their feigned defeats to render the UCS cocky and arrogant, all so they could round them up and slaughter them wholesale with ease. It was brutally efficient, a tactic that betrayed their humble outward aesthetics, a plan that could not have been their own. It was clear to Krepto that this plan was bestowed upon them by the last Emperor, as were many things. It seemed Locta the Faithful was not the first of his name to attack his own people out of a sense of greater purpose. Of course, what could one expect from a being who wasn't even truly Clepathian? Krepto had failed in keeping Locta away from himself, and now it was like he was watching the friend he once knew slip away with each passing moment, changing into someone else entirely. Locta didn't think so, but Krepto knew so. What was unknown as the journey ahead was whether either of them understood so. Here it comes. Hit the cloak as soon as we break warp, Crypto said, nodding towards the opening at the end of the warp portal before them. As soon as the blue ribbons of strange energy disappear, and the vacant blackness was filled with the world of Chelor and stars around it, Locta activated the cloak just in time before a UCS supercarrier passed by right in front of them. Crypto and Locta both held their breaths as the massive, heavily armed ship passed by, circling around their exit point before altering course and departing back to its patrol. Locta sighed in relief. For a moment there, I thought they saw us. Crypto continued to eye the ship as it departed back towards the violet and green world of Chelor. It definitely picked up our warp portal signature. Chances are it's already relaying information back to the rest of command. We'll have to blend in with the rest of Star Trek traffic if we want to get to the surface without suspicion, he said, taking the ship towards Chelor. The space around the planet was hardly empty, as entire space highways of ships made rings around the world, going to and from space station clusters that were like orbital cities in their own right. Surrounding the shell of orbital commerce was a defensive screen of warships and formation of 5, once security checkpoints, now outposts due to wartime. Maneuvering the rickety old starship to the best of his ability, Crypto carefully slipped them between the patrols, passing within mere kilometers of them. Even though the cloak seemed to hold fine so far, he still had his doubts and tried to keep as much distance as possible between them and the other ships. The outposts were not of the most concern to him, however. The real danger lay in slipping within the incoming and outgoing radio chatter to mask their signal when they needed to uncloak. He doubted there were many Clepathians who turned a blind eye to such a foreign vessel appearing out of nowhere. Taking a deep breath and wiping his brow, Crypto spoke to Locta. Get ready to deactivate the cloak and send the docking signal. Get ready to deactivate the cloak and send the docking signal to coordinates. -34. -41. Oh, wait, let me reread that. Get ready to deactivate the cloak and send docking signal to coordinates -34, -41. Locta questioned his coordinates. Where's that lead? To the southern swamps. The Prime Mystic Temple according to the coordinates in my grandmother's book. Crypto explained as Chelor grew larger and larger in the view screen. You really think someone living as ascetic mystics would have a way to receive docking requests? Locta asked skeptically. Crypto smirked at him. I thought you were supposed to be the faithful one. I'm sure they'll have some way. There's a deerling in chat if anyone wants it. And if they don't? Asked Locta. With an anxious sigh, Crypto bluntly replied, then we'll die before we hit the exosphere. Planetary screening shield will zap us out of the sky, thinking we're little more than a falling asteroid of space debris. Locta gulped in fear as the moment of truth lied ahead of him. They were so close now, yet so far. All they had to do was transmit their ID, get docking clearance to the southern hemisphere, and then all would be okay. That was at least what Locta believed. What he knew was that this journey had been easy. So far. Perhaps too easy. Alright, we're in position, Crypto said, pulling back on the throttle as he listened through the comms for the static of the garbled radio chatter. With his shoulders tensed as his tail whipping to and fro through the hole in the back of the chair, Crypto gave a nod at Locta. Now, deactivate the cloak and send the signal. I'll keep an eye on the scanners. With his hands jittering nervously like that of a stimulant addict, Locta powered down the cloak and immediately began broadcasting a universal docking request to any receiving within Crypto's designated grid square. A sound of beeps and chirps repeated over and over from the communications console to the right of Locta, repeating their pinging request over and over. Attention to the designated grid square. That's not part of the story. Come on, Crypto murmured anxiously. The longer they waited here, visible to all before them, the closer they were to getting blasted to space dust. And then it happened. Like a jarring electronic wail, the scanner in front of Crypto blared erratically, flashing red as the whole ship's alarms cried out in warning. Damn it, we've been detected, Crypto shouted, grabbing a hold of the yoke and slamming the throttle forward, throwing them both back in their seats. How many? How many? Locta questioned over the blaring alarms, and suddenly the whole ship shuddered and shook, nearly battering their heads against the walls. Damage alarms accompanied the proximity alerts as if the ship were screaming in pain. Outside of the view screen, a whole squadron of small point defense interceptors blitzed past them, showering them with a flurry of particle beam cannons. Does it matter? Turn the cloak back on! Crypto cried out as he struggled to evade their pursuers. Locta desperately tried to activate the cloak, but all his efforts were rewarded with was a glowing red error upon the screen. It's not working! They must have hit it on the first run. I'll try to get the shields up instead. Quickly, Locke's finger tapped away on the console, activating the ship's rudimentary and outdated shielding. He shook his head in dreadful shock. They won't hold for long. Can we warp out? The ship rumbled and heaved once again from another barrage of interceptor-mounted energy weapons. If we try to warp out, they'll just follow us right through our own portal. Crypto shook his head desperately. Is the docking signal still transmitting? He asked, looking up at Locke. Yeah. Locke nodded. Then that's the only hope we've got. Crypto shook his head as he slammed his foot down on the left yaw pedal and yanked the control yoke back, throwing the ship into a snap roll just in time to evade the plasma barrage from a larger destroyer ship. Looks like they're sending in the big guns. I'll try to keep her in one piece as long as I can. See if you can do anything about those hull breaches. Locke nodded and unbuckled himself, bracing himself with his hands against the walls. It took all his focus to keep his balance as he proceeded towards the back of the ship, where there was a smell of burning plastics and a sharp whistle of air being sucked out into space. Upon the wall, an old fire extinguisher rested on a pair of hooks, but when he reached up to grab it, the ship jerked to the port and threw Locke to the ground. You okay back there? Crypto called back, hearing the heavy thud of Locke tumbling about. Using his large tail for balance, Locke scrambled to his feet, reaching for the fire extinguisher. I'm fine. He coughed as the smoke began to fill his lungs. He pulled the pin from the extinguisher lever, gave the bottle a shake, and aimed it at the burning circuitry in the floor, and produced a spray of fire-retardant gel with a squeeze of the lever. With the fire put out and catching himself as the ship heaved once again, Locke looked for a way to plug the hull breach until he found Crypto's used wet towel. Acting quickly, he wadded it up and jammed it into the crack. All right, I think I got it. Locke cried back to Crypto. Good, I think we've got clearance too. Crypto shouted in disbelief. Come on, get up here before— Ah! An immediate explosive crash hammered against the ship before Crypto could finish, throwing Locke to the floor again and igniting even more fires throughout the ship. Locke scurried to his feet, holding his forehead as his ears began to ring from the concussive blow. He looked at his hand, seeing his own black blood upon it from the wound, but his concern laid with the one in the cockpit. Crypto? Crypto! Locke cried out between coughs, rushing towards the smoke-filled cockpit, the fractured view screen giving a hazy, glitched view of the spinning planet before them, and then he saw his friend sitting limp in his seat. Crypto's forehead bled profusely, and he was entirely unresponsive to Locke shaking him. Damn it, hold on, buddy! We ain't dying yet, Locke said, unbuckling Crypto from his seat and putting him in the co-pilot's as Locke sat in his place. With no time to strap himself in, Locke quickly hammered the throttle forward and tugged the crumbling ship towards the surface. With the ship nearly ripped apart, and Locke's lack of piloting experience, Locke only barely managed to keep it on course. In doing so, he neglected the interceptors still chasing the ship, closing in like missiles to destroy it before it breached the exosphere. Just gotta make it through the atmosphere, Locke told himself, for the interceptors could only fly in vacuum. Creator, help us now. He gulped as he looked at Crypto's unconscious, perhaps even dead, body. All of a sudden, an explosion rang out from behind, and the ship jerked into a fierce clockwise roll. Locke tried to counteract it, but he failed to realize his attempts were in vain as the control lines were severed and the internal stabilizer reduced to molten slag. The ship rolled faster and faster as it began to catch a flame in the upper atmosphere, picking up more and more speed. Locke buckled himself and Crypto in a last-ditch attempt for survival, bracing himself for impact. Like a falling meteor, the ship scorched its way through the clouds over the southern half of Chelor's supercontinent in a blaze of twisting, disintegrated metal. Locke closed his eyes when the ground came into view, ducked his head low, and muttered a silent prayer until, like a flip of a switch, all was dark. All was silent. Well, spaceship crash. Take a sip here. So, that chapter, Locke and Crypto having their clear disagreements. Locke is clearly changing, having a different outlook on life than Crypto does. Their beliefs, I guess, fundamentally diverging. Now, will their friendship hold up? Well, I guess we'll have to see. And then, of course, they approached Chelor, had to deactivate the cloak to send a signal, and were immediately attacked by interceptors. And they got shot down and are now plummeting through the atmosphere, and make a crash landing. Let's see what the results of that are. Let's see how much longer we got. We got about an hour left. We might be able to get 2 chapters done, maybe 3, depending on how long or short they are. Hope you all are enjoying the story so far. Chapter 5, Echoes of Eons. Locta couldn't even feel the pain at first. Not beyond the startling smell of burning starship fuel and burning flesh. He forced his heavy eyelids open as if he were prying apart the gates rusted shut, and into his pupils flooded blindingly bright light. Only then, with a hazy picture interpreted by his brain, came the pain once the adrenaline left his bloodstream. Each throb of his heart was like a jackhammer battering the inside of his skull, and each move of a muscle felt like razor blades swimming beneath his skin. But somehow he survived. Cautiously, for fear of making whatever injuries he had even worse, Locta slowly sat up from where he laid in a crater of mud. He tried to feel for the blackened tears at his hip, but then suddenly gasped as needles of agony raced all throughout his right arm. Locta's eyes shot wide, open with tears, his jaw clenched in the bitter pain. He looked down at his arm to see that it had not only suffered second-degree burns, but was also broken in two places, the shattered bone beneath his forearm protruding through the bloodied, charred flesh and fur above his elbow, piercing even the mail and at the joints of his armor. Locta couldn't look at it any longer, panting heavily and gulping down his urge to vomit at the grisly sight. He looked at his other arm and down at his legs to his feet, flexing his claw-like toes and wiggling his tail to make sure he wasn't paralyzed. Aside from his horribly mangled arm and many burns, he was mostly uninjured. He'd survive, he assured himself, but his survival alone was not enough. Hello, Gilded Mongoose. Hope you're doing well. We're doing some reading. Locta swiveled his head around where he sat in the mud, scanning for Krepto. All he could see was thick soup of damp, cold fog, slushy mud, and a dense, leafless trees surrounding him. Beyond that, there was a vague silhouette of burning. A vague silhouette of the burning, trash ship embedded into the ground, barely even recognizable. From what it seemed by the crater and snapped trees around him, Locta had been thrown a few hundred meters from the cockpit. It was a miracle he was even alive in the first place, but he worried that Krepto may not have been so lucky in surviving his second starship crash. Slowly, careful not to jostle his nearly severed arm, Locta managed to stand up. To his surprise, his sword was undamaged now that he looked down at it, trying to ignore the sight of his own black bone and blood lest he fall into shock. Already Locta felt woozy upon standing, but he could not allow himself to fall asleep. He would be captured. Krepto's life could have depended on him now, and so he took slow, limping steps out of the crater towards the wrecked ship. Krepto? Krepto! Locta called out for him, but the only response was the symphony of swampy wildlife around him and the consuming flame before him. When he came close enough to the ship, he saw where he crashed through the view screen in the cockpit. He looked inside the hole, but there was no sign of Krepto to be found. However, he did see drops of what looked like solidified gold leading out a hole torn into the ship, a trail of Krepto's blood. With a mix of both hope and despair, Locta picked up his pace as quick as he could manage and followed the trail leading off into the woods. Accompanying the trail was a dragging streak through the mud and handprints of 4 long clawed digits beside. Krepto was hurt, perhaps even worse than him. After a few minutes of trudging through the mud, away from the ship, the trail ended at the base of a tree where the mud was drier and the ground covered with leaves. Krepto, are you still out there? Locta called out again, and then his ears twitched when he heard the noise coming from behind a fallen log to his right. Shh! With his voice just above a whisper, Locta called out again. Krepto? He slowly approached the fallen tree, and there, sitting with his back to it, as covered in mud as Krepto sat. He held his hand on his leg above the knee, his face winced in pain as the other held a finger up to his lips. Krepto's eyes shifted off in the distance, and then he tapped his left ear twice. Locta looked in the same direction and listened carefully. Over the crackling fire behind him and sounds of this untamed land, he heard distant voices and footsteps through the brush from search parties investigating the crash. Locta gently sat down beside Krepto. How bad are you hurt? He asked quietly. To be honest, pretty bad. Krepto groaned in response. But not as bad as you. You gotta cover and brace that wound before it gets infected. Grabbed the waistcoat of his uniform and tore a large chunk of fabric from it. Let me see that arm, he said. With his teeth gritted, and as every slight movement radiated jolts of pain, Locta used his left hand to pick up his limp and useless right, pulling it over towards Krepto. Krepto reached over his shoulder with the cloth. It's gonna hurt. A lot. Ready? Krepto looked in his eyes as he warned him. Looking up and away, Locta bit his lower lip and nodded. Right away, Krepto began to set the bone back in place and tie cloth around his arm, from his upper arm all the way to the middle of his forearm. What in the... Crypto complained as he tried to slide the armor off Locta's forearm. The armor... It's stuck. He looked at Locta's other arm, and then the rest of the armor upon him. The obsidian plates were a part of him. Guess I should have told you before you started pulling that it doesn't come off. Locta grunted through his clenched teeth, his eyes watering in pain. Crypto immediately ceased trying to pull off the vambrace. Oh, sorry. Well, let's see here. He wrapped the cloth around the armor instead. A little sloppy looking, but he was no doctor in the first place. Crypto then took the last strips of cloth and tied it at its ends, pulling it over Locta's ears and head until his arm was cradled in a combination of a cast and a sling. That'll keep it still and clean. Without proper attention, it's not going to heal right. We need to find the mystics, urged Locta. Mystics? Have you seen us? We're barely even alive! Crypto exclaimed in a whisper. Locta nodded. I know, but maybe they can heal us with their magic. He explained the distress and beating he endured evident in his hoarse voice and fatigued eyes. Maybe Algoris was right. I wasn't ready. If I had stuck around just a little longer, maybe I would have learned how to heal such wounds. He looked at Crypto, who was almost as battered as he was, and sighed apologetically. I'm sorry, Crypto. You never asked for this. Crypto shook his head and looked around the foggy, swampy terrain. It's too late to have regrets now. Not like we have any chance at going back. He groaned before looking down at his leg and back at Locta. While your arm might be in bad shape, at least you can still walk. Maybe you should go on ahead. When you find the mystics, and if they can heal us, I'll wait for you here. No, I'm not leaving you here. Locta shook his head. These are the marshlands, the swamps. A shadowback burrower could swallow you up at any moment, and that's if the patrols looking for us don't find you first. Crypto tried to protest. Locta, no, I'm not leaving you behind. Locta insisted with a determined stare in Crypto's eyes. My left arm's still fine. I can give you support along the way. You'll just slow yourself down, Crypto retorted and looked away. Locta rolled his eyes. And so what? We're friends, Crypto. We stick with each other because that's what friends do, he said, staring into Crypto's eyes. Crypto stared back at his for a moment, but said nothing before Locta insisted again. Besides, what kind of savior would I be if I left you behind? What's one to the many, though? Crypto questioned his logic, but held up his hand for Locta to take it. Here we go. But held up his hand for Locta to take it. Locta smiled as he took his hand, shouldering his weight as he stood. The Creator doesn't look at us as statistics, he grunted while lifting both himself and Crypto upright. If so much as one soul is saved by his hand, and it said the angels themselves dance in celebration. Crypto made no comment, keeping his eyes fixed forward. With them both slowly hobbling their way away from the ship, Crypto listened all around for patrols. Keep your eyes sharp as a blade. Stick to the fog and shadows if you can. Locta nodded and bore a clever smirk. Actually, I think I have an idea. What's that? Crypto asked, but Locta answered not in words. He closed his eyes for a few seconds, appearing to focus intently before opening them again. Crypto blinked in bewilderment when he saw the green irises around his eyes change to a glowing gold. Locta, however, was unaware of this change to his eye color when he harnessed his celestial sight. Appearing like wisps or glimmering fog in Locta's vision, patrols of two were all around them, near and far. Locta looked back over his shoulder, seeing already a few of the patrols teamed around the wreckage. Crypto agreeing to come along brought him much relief, even if it was reluctantly. If the UCS caught Crypto alive as a turncoat, they'd probably make his current injuries look like a mere bruise under their punishments. When he looked back ahead of them, he saw another source of great spirit or energy glimmering through the fog, but it was no individual. It wasn't even a soul in the first place, but another great source of magic and power, the Mystic Temple. Not bad, just eating beef patties. How are you? Doing pretty good. We finished Resident Evil 5 today, and now we're catching up on story reading since I missed last week's reading. It wasn't far, but Locta knew not to rush, especially with Crypto's broken leg, and still Crypto was silent. Still, he was distant. Locta's curiosity swelled. He knew it would only take one look with his celestial sight to know why, his previous innate perception now given control through discipline and Algoris mentoring, but it didn't feel right to do so. Friends were to trust each other, not crawl around inside one's very soul to see their every secret. But what if they were troubled? What if What if they were in danger, and looking out for them was for the better? Indeed, the faith Locke wished to embody was not a faith of being nice. Kindness, mercy, and charity were virtuous, but above all virtues was truth. Truth was light, light was love, and love was truth. Locke loved Krepto like a friend, no, a brother, so maybe it was for the better if he just took a simple, slight peek. He glanced at Krepto, and that one split second was all he needed to understand why Krepto was so distant. And a sudden bolt of regret lanced through his heart with a pain greater than all his abused flesh. He bit his lip and looked sharply away in the distance, hiding his sudden emotion. Though Locke cherished Krepto, Locke saw only fear in him. Krepto didn't want to be around him. He barely even recognized him. It pained Locke now as much as it pained Krepto that he felt so crushed, abandoned, and desolated. He did not lie in his reasons for joining Locke earlier. He was only helping him out of one small sliver of hope that maybe this reality was the one. That maybe this really was the Locke he remembered. That maybe they could eventually put all this behind them, laugh and joke with one another, and just do what they used to do when the universe seemed so simple. Krepto wished for Locke to go back to being mortal. Now he was just so foreign, and all Locke could feel is as if he failed Krepto somewhere along the way. What was he doing wrong? Why was he losing his friend? It was a question not to ask to the events around him, but to who he was. And that there still remained a mystery, and because he knew not what he was, neither did either of them know who he was. If one was defined by their actions, then Krepto was very clearly a patriot and noble soul who loved his people. But what was Locke? What was faith without a cause? Perhaps in his faith being so untested and blind for a creator he did not know or understand, so too was Locke without a definition. So too was Locke himself, in name only. Perhaps ahead lied answers, however. While shouldering Krepto's weight, his own mangled arm, his pounding headache, and dodging the patrols of the UCS all around, Locke steadily marched onward until finally the silhouette of the temple came into view through the gray, misty morning. Locke's panting breath faded into sighs of relief, but as he stared at the ominous dome-shaped stone building with holy symbols and ancient glyphs carved in it, he realized they had a new problem. The temple did not have any doors. There was an old stone platform outside, presumably a landing pad, and a pathway leading to the temple itself, but it ended at its solid walls. The mystics always were reclusive, but Locke never suspected this much as he stared upon the great, almost featureless building. Now it made sense why they were so difficult to contact, but they must have had some way to know Locke and Krepto were coming if they accepted the docking signal. That, or it was a clever trap, but Locke was hardly in the mood or condition to spring traps. He was getting in that temple one way or another, broken arm or not. Well, this isn't good, Locke said. He looked at Krepto. You know a lot about the mystics. Any clue on how to get in? Krepto shook his head. No clue. That's one of their many great secrets. Gotta get in there, but I doubt knocking on stone is gonna work. Locke exclaimed in exhausted, pained frustration. Hold on a minute. Today's breakfast is coming up in indigestion. Guess we're gonna have to break out the drills and carve our way through it. Krepto rolled his eyes sarcastically. Locke blinked and held up his finger. Wait, carve our way through it. He looked down at the blackened tears at his hip. Krepto's words from the past echoed through his mind. That the sword was a very catalyst of his being. The powers he could channel through it confirmed this, so perhaps the blackened tears was the key. He looked back up to Krepto. I'm gonna need to sit you down, okay? Krepto nodded. All right, just be gentle. Locke slowly stooped down, grunting as he let Krepto off his shoulders. Grunting as he let Krepto off his shoulder to sit upon the stone path they stood upon. Krepto watched as Locke took the sword's hilt in his left hand, pulling it out of the ring on his belt, securing it in place. In his offhand, the heavy weapon's weight pulled its tip to the ground with a clang upon the stone. At first, Krepto thought he was going to try to smack the stone with the great black blade like a fool, but then Locke stared down at the sword in his hand. He closed his eyes and took a few deep breaths, concentrating for a moment until streams of glowing white and gold energy began to dance around the weapon's hilt. Krepto watched in awe at the blackened tears as the runes along the broad side glowed alight one by one with the magical energy pouring into them, and once were alight, Locke opened his eyes. He focused forward on the temple, sensing the magical energies of this place flow around him, and through him like a river. He searched through the eyes of spirit for a doorway, and when he found it, raised up the key. Hoisting the blackened tears upon his shoulder, he then heaved it in a wide diagonal left to right downward swing, the magical blade leaving behind a floating gash in reality suspended in the air before him. The tear of magic opened up into what looked like a floating sideways whirlpool of light. The entrance was open. Locta looked back at Krepto with an accomplished smile as he sheathed his sword at his hip. He walked over to him and took his hand, lifting his friend back up upon his shoulders. So many thought the sword was silly and impractical. Come on, let's go, he urged as he heard patrols approaching them. The two of them rushed as fast as they could limp into the portal, the white light blinding their vision until it faded into darkness. They looked behind them only to see the portal outside close shut, and now they were alone in what looked like an infinite, dark abyss. Where are we? Locta questioned, but Krepto did not respond. Krepto? He asked, then realized Krepto was no longer grabbing a hold of him. He also realized his arm no longer hurt and he could move his hand again. Locta unwrapped the pieces of cloth from his suddenly healed right arm and, with both hands, unsheathed his blade. Holding it out before him, he ignited the weapon with a bright, holy flame. Krepto was nowhere to be found. Even though he could see himself, nothing else existed around him. It was as if he stood upon a non-existent ground, yet was smooth like cold ice or glass. Krepto? Locta cried out, but without answer. Not even an echo of his own voice called back as if he stood in the center of a black hole. Though his wounds were healed and his body in pain no longer, a new pain in his mind swelled in its place. Where was he? Where was Krepto? He spun around until he saw, in the distance, he spun around and around until he saw, in the distance, a simple door with a faint glow behind it. Locta approached the door with caution in his steps through the black abyss, looking upon it with cautious fear. He stepped around and looked behind it, but there was nothing there. Just a door and its frame, with light permeating through its seams. Locta walked around back and forth. Locta walked around back in front of it and rubbed his chin, squinting at it skeptically. Slowly he reached forward and grabbed the handle. He turned it and pushed the door open, and when he stepped inside, he found himself in what looked like a great stone hall. He sensed that something was watching him, following him. All of a sudden, the door slammed shut behind him. He gasped and bolted ahead through the hall in a sudden panic. He ran and ran, his sword in hand and his breath panting in terrified confusion. What was this place? What was this madness? The hall took a sharp turn left, and Locta skidded to a halt with his claws raking upon the polished stone as he saw the two standing within the round, featureless room. Krepto? Algoris? Locta exclaimed through panting breaths. Algoris lifted his regretful eyes to Locta and clenched his fist.
I never should have let you go. You aren't ready for the darkness that comes.
Krepto then spoke up, extending his golden axe like Stilis's. Then maybe together we can fight it.
No, if we fight the darkness here, we will die.
Algoris shook his head dejectedly. Krepto snapped at Algoris with a glare. And if we flee, we'll die like cowards. If I'm the first of my people to fall to it, then let it be known I died fighting, he argued back. Wait, what are you guys even talking about? Locta exclaimed in hopeless confusion. Algoris and Krepto looked at each other with a knowing stare as if Locta wasn't even there. He does not know, said Krepto.
And he does not understand,
nodded Algoris. They both looked back to him with a long, judging stare. You believe, but you do not know, sneered Krepto.
You have faith, but in something you do not understand,
sighed Algoris. Locta shook his head in confusion as he took a step back. Then help me understand, he scoffed with a shake of his head.
The blind leads the blind out of a fire and into a bottomless pit,
Algoris said, once again as if Locta was not present. Oh, thanks for the hydrate, Phantom.
The blind leads the blind out of a fire and into a bottomless pit,
Algoris said once again as if Locta was not present. At the end of either divergent road, their paths meet in death, commented Krepto with a solemn nod. Algoris looked up to Locta.
The question is, do you believe you are ready to face death?
Do you serve your faith as its champion, or does your faith serve you as refuge from your own cowardice? Crypto questioned him next. Locke held his sword close, an aura of anxiety and icy dread from within the chamber writhed into his heart. He gulped, blinked, and eyed them both. I believe I will prevail as a savior. When the darkness I must face comes, then I will destroy it as commanded of me. Oh, stretch. All right. Oh. I believe I will prevail as a savior. When the darkness I must face comes, then I will destroy it as commanded of me, he replied quickly with trembling breaths. But why? Asked Algoris, tilting his head with an accusing glare. Yes, why? Crypto asked as well, mirroring Algoris' gestures. Locke hesitated. His tense stance slackened and his eyes drifted to the ground in thought, wrestling with the question. I don't know. I suppose it's because faith is all I have left. The whole chamber suddenly rumbled and growled. The already dim light within darkened to almost pitch black. Algoris looked up at him with betrayal in his tired eyes. Then you have learned nothing. And in your ignorance, you have betrayed us all. Crypto shook his head dismally at the floor. From behind them both, a pair of glowing red eyes opened within the shadows. Look out! Behind you! Logda shouted, but Algoris and Crypto stood still, accepting their fate. From within the blackness jutted forth long, black blades, which rushed forth and, with a sickening sound of eviscerated flesh, found their way into the hearts of Crypto and Algoris from behind. No! Logda shouted in terror, immediately igniting his blade in holy fire and charging across the room at the creature in the darkness. You bastard! I'll kill you! He cried out, but as his blade swung forth, it passed through the creature as if it wasn't there. The creature closed its eyes, disappeared, and then reappeared behind him. The shadows cloaking the light from the chamber coalesced into a dark silhouette of a Clepathian, wielding styluses reminiscent of Locta's own weapon. Locta's first stood on end as aghast, for all that he could see in its hateful red eyes was the chilling reflection of his own fear. No, this isn't real! This is just an illusion! Locta cried out desperately. The specter slowly marched towards him, speaking with a voice like that of a million swords scraping against bone. This is no illusion. This is no dream. This is no nightmare. This is the end of your road as you have ended theirs. Snarled the figure, pointing down at the bodies of Crypto and Algoris. He suddenly reared back his blades and slashed them across Locta's abdomen. They tore clean through his armor, lacerating the flesh beneath them with a searing, powerful magic. Locta yelped and whimpered, stumbling back a few steps as his blood splattered on the floor before turning about and fleeing the beast. With one arm covering his wounded gut, he ran through the dark halls as fast as his feet could carry him. The darkness grew and grew. His heart pounded faster and faster until all he could see was blackness. And all he could smell was the scent of ash and fire. Then, ahead, he saw a bright light, a hope, a sign of salvation. With all the strength he could spare, Locta leaped for the light and tumbled out onto the ground. In an instant, he felt his lungs choked with ash. Locta coughed and sputtered as he picked himself up. But when he saw the wreckage and death littered around him now, his heart sank with the instinct that there was nowhere left to run. All around was a ruined city of demolished buildings, clouds of gray ash fogging the air like a blizzard, and decaying countless bodies piled high as mountains on the streets. Tattered banners of the past waved in the wind, and on one cracked wall of a ruined building before him was the Felthmore family seal, broken and defiled. He looked in the distance to see a smoldering structure he recognized as the Capitol building. This was Chelor's inner city. This was his home. With each step forward upon the dead, battle-scarred streets, the sheer agony of the world radiated through the still warm ash beneath his feet. He fell to his knees, clutching at his chest with his jaw dropped at the unbearable pain of the land. It was as if all the death around him, all the cries of the lost souls whose broken bodies rotted by the millions, were in him. His heart cried out for release, for death, and by the sound of the encroaching beast behind, death had found him. However, he closed his eyes and gritted his teeth. The blade in his hand was still sharp, and his body still obeyed him. Locta could not give up. Not yet. Not while he still had faith. With the blackened tears in hand, he let out a desperate roar and lashed out at the beast. The creature held up his styluses, deflecting Locke's strike, and before Locke could even hope to counter again, the creature maneuvered his weapon inside Locke's defenses. It grappled his sword with its hooked tips out of it. It grappled his sword with the hooked tips of its styluses and threw it from his hands. Helpless to defend himself, the beast grabbed Locke by the throat and slammed him against the wall behind the broken Felthmore seal, glaring up at him. Terrified and defeated, Locke closed his eyes and faced away, but he could not shut out the creature's haunting words. For you to share the name of your predecessors is an insult to the blood in your veins. You are frail in body, weak in mind. The fruits of such incompetence lay piled high in the mountains of death and decay around you. You have failed, Locke. You are no savior, for all your actions have wrought his damnation. He then dropped Locke to the ground, glowering down upon him like the shadow of death itself. And what have you to say in defense? Questioned the creature. With trembling breaths, and his eyes staring at its wicked magical blades, Locke gulped and gave a meek answer. I may not have strength. I may not be intelligent, but I do have one thing. I have faith. I am the faithful. He quivered, his hand over his wounded abdomen. Those laying dead around you too once had faith. They once believed as you did, perhaps even more than you did, and look now what it brought them, said the creature, gesturing to a nearby half-decayed corpse serving as little more than a feast for maggots. They are the martyrs of eons past, and they reaped their reward in faith for faith's sake, the path of the grave. They are forgotten, and always will be. If faith is all that you have, then like them and your world, you will perish, and your memory will be like ashes scattered in the wind. The creature glared down at Locke in disdain and what seemed like disappointment. If you remain so blind, then your road ends here. Locke closed his eyes and braced himself for death. After all, he deserved it, did he not? The creature spoke truth. He believed, but blindly, and all he would wring from such misdirection is damnation. Those who followed him would be no worse off following their own pursuits, for like Locke, all that they followed would be in vain. All of Locke's faith was in vain. He served not faith, but himself. He was not just a fool, but still a coward. With deep regret, his eyes began to water over. And I pray that the Creator have mercy on me, he whimpered, defeated by his own guilty revelation, for failing to understand. Maybe I really am unworthy of the blood I carry, and if that's so, then I deserve nothing short of being erased from existence lest I leech upon it further, he said, realizing now that there was more to the Creator than believing in him. Where Locke had failed was to know him. Why do you hesitate? Locke questioned the specter without opening his eyes, unable to even look upon the specter of darkness in his own hypocrisy. I've believed in a god I do not know. I've been just as blind as the poor souls I fought to save. Locke waited for the blades to meet his throat or heart, but after a few moments of whimpering and sobbing in his guilt, he still lived. He didn't understand, opening his tear-laden eyes slowly up at the specter to see that his blades were retracted. The figure's eyes looked down upon him not in hate or disappointment, but sympathetically. With Locke now facing up to the darkness within himself, the specter nodded slowly at him. Then maybe there is hope for you yet, faithful. The specter then stepped back, and streams of light began pulling the darkness from the one standing beneath. Locke's mouth went agape in awe at who he witnessed beneath the darkness. The specter was no demon or evil figure at all, but a Clepathian lying beneath it, yet this was no ordinary Clepathian, as Locke could tell from the strange sensation stirring in his soul. It was as if he knew him, remembered him, yet at the same time did not. The peace in his eyes radiated unto Locke. He could tell that this being meant him no harm. Apprehensively, Locke stood up and voiced the question clawing through his mind. Who are you? In some ways, I am you. In some ways, you are me. In many ways, we are the same. And in many ways, we are different, said the figure in a gentle voice, cloaked in a heavy brown cloth robe with a shepherd's stave in hand. I have not come to sow confusion, but to give birth to clarity. We both share the same name. You are the faithful, and I am the repentant. Cold chills lanced all throughout Locta's body when the answer was revealed. You're Locta the Repentant? The first incarnation? I am, just as you are the last, said the Repentant with a nod. From his eye color, the stripes on his ears, his size, and even his voice, he was like a clone to the faithful in every way, except one. The Repentant had styluses, as seen by the slits on his forearms. Come, retrieve your weapon, and walk with me, said the Repentant, holding out his empty left hand as a bright swirl of magic leaped from it, danced in the air, and opened into a portal. With a nervous gulp, Locta the Faithful walked around the Repentant and retrieved the blackened tears off the ground. After sheathing it, he followed the Repentant through the portal. As before, his wounds were instantly healed, but now Locta was back in a long corridor similar to the one before he entered the ruined city. Dimly lit by dusty candles along the walls, it seemed to stretch on forever, but the Repentant was in no hurry, speaking slow and softly as he walked. You have learned a valuable lesson this day, that faith alone is worth nothing if you do not understand that which you have faith in. Hold on, why are you telling me this now? Why you? Did you not die over millions of years ago? Asked the faithful, overwhelmed with confusion. Because I, too, once fell under the same spell of hopeful ignorance as you have, said the Repentant. An almost countless amount of years ago, I was given a gift by the Creator, and it was because of this alone I believed. I believed in his existence and his power. I used it to my own ends because, at the time, our people had a very different way of thinking. In some ways, our people still cling to these thoughts, back when our people were little more than upright beasts fueled by the same instincts of their primordial ancestors. You've seen it through the sight we both share, I know you have. The faithful hesitated, but then nodded silently. The Repentant continued his explanation. It is not surprising, but to make matters clear, I knew not the Creator. I did not care, either. Why should I have cared? I had power, and that was all that mattered to me at the time. It was only when this power was taken from me and turned against me, when my own sins were paid back to me well over 100,000-fold, that I realized, much like you, that I failed. But even in that defeat, I found a victory. You see, my mistake was not in lacking belief in the Creator, but in lacking understanding of him. But how can anyone hope to understand someone so far beyond us? The faithful questioned as they continued to walk down the grand hall. The Repentant smiled slightly and gave his answer. In that question lies the key to why you do not know or understand. The Creator is not an impersonal, distant object. Indeed, you have learned now he reaches down to us, but have you considered how he does so? No, you have not. But I will tell you what I learned when I went through your struggle. The Creator reaches down to us by being us, revealed the Repentant. By the look on the faithful's face, the Repentant knew he was confused. It may seem absurd, but think about it. Every mortal you see possesses a spirit no other living creature has, and every one of these spirits is unique. Did we simply evolve our way into growing a spirit like we grow our tails in the womb? Nay, of course not. It was a gift to us, a fragment of the Creator living within us. In a way, we are all creators in a very limited sense, but it is due to him placing himself among us. You see, to know the Creator is to know those around you, know your people, understand them, and within their virtues you will find the Creator's love. Even in the smallest acts of mercy, the Creator is there, said the Repentant. That is my lesson to you, Locta the Faithful. Do not have faith for faith's sake, neither for your own sake, but out of love. Your allies may be few now, but that will change in time. So too will your enemies grow stronger against you. Sin despises virtue, and virtue despises sin. Locta the Faithful began to understand him, blinking in the revelation. It's just like the Creator has many who hate him. Then you are learning already. By knowing the souls of those who follow and fight you, you will understand the Creator, and by understanding the Creator, you will understand yourself in time, said the Repentant with a knowing smile, answering the question which was pestering Locta for so long, how to know his true nature and identity. Rest assured, young faithful, There will come a time where all these questions perplexing you now will be answered, but know this. It is not something that will come from without, but from within. See them, see him, and then you will be able to see yourself. The repentant then halted and held out his open hand again. Like before, a portal was conjured from his magic, and the repentant pointed towards it. Go now. Your destiny awaits. And remember, nothing is bought without sacrifice. Locke nodded and gulped, taking a step towards the portal, but then paused. He looked over his shoulder at the repentant, waiting to say something, but not sure how to word it at first. Thank you. And if there's one last question I could ask, will I ever meet again? Will we ever meet again? The repentant grinned and looked aside nonchalantly. We will. Even when it comes to us, history has a funny way of repeating itself. Do not forget what you learned and saw here. Goodbye, Locke to the Faithful. We shall see you soon. He then departed in a flash of bright light, leaving Locke to the Faithful alone with the portal. With nowhere else to go, and no use in staying here, Locke shielded his eyes and stepped inside. Beneath his feet he felt smooth, cold marble turn to warm, rough stone. The air grew cozily warm as well, and there was an aura of tranquility in the air. He unshielded his sight, and before him he could see several female Carpathians dressed in strange, lavish purple robes. All of them gazed upon him in silent wonder. Confused, Locke swept his eyes around his surroundings, seeing that he was in a small, cozy room with very primitive furnishings of hand-woven cloth, carved wood, and chiseled stone. His confusion was soon brought to a halt as he heard a feminine voice speak to him in front of the ranks of the robed women before him. Or speak to him from within the ranks of the robed women before him. Welcome, Locke de Felthmore, she said, to our humble temple. Locke studied the mystic who approached him now, her purple robe seeming simpler than the silent others. Levitating above her head was a strange, glowing violet rune of magic, and he could not keep his eyes off of it even as she introduced herself. I am Archmystic Decrathia. We have been anticipating your arrival. Huh? Oh, apologies, Locke stuttered, forcing himself not to be distracted by her appearance, his mind frazzled by all that he had witnessed. Well, evening, ladies? Decrathia and the other mystics raised their brows and eyed each other, somewhat surprised by Locke's lack of grace. She looked upon him curiously. He was unnerved, disturbed. You are trembling, she said. You are afraid. Locke blinked and looked at his left hand, the fur upon it still raised and shaking like the rest of his body. Decrathia smiled warmly and took his hand into hers. There's no need to hide your fear, for there's no reason to feel it. Everyone who wished to enter the sacred ground you stand upon must first pass a trial, facing themselves to cleanse themselves. So, it was an illusion? Locke rubbed the back of his neck, uncertain whether what he was seeing was real or not after what he had went through. Decrathia shook her head. No, it was real, very real. In some ways, it was more than real. What you experienced within was a reflection of your own weakness, but also hope on how to overcome them. I can't even begin to imagine what someone like you saw. Savior, she said with her silken voice, continuing to feel Locke's hand in her own. But even if you are so divine, I think it would be best if you did not speak of it. I wish we could speak more of this, but both of us know that time is short. You came here for a reason. Locke held out his right hand and halted her. Wait, I came here with another, taller, dressed in a tattered uniform, blue eyes. Tattered uniform. Have you seen him? Oh, that shouldn't be here. That should not be there. Okay. Decrathia looked back at her fellow mystic sisters, and then to Locke once more. Ah, Crepto Mrodcrex, she said, letting go of his hand. His trial of self is not yet completed. I warn you, though you entered these holy grounds together, you both walk very different paths. What are you saying? Locke questioned her, warning. Decrathia looked upon him, her beautiful appearance, tranquil eyes, and gentle voice betraying 3 simple, foreboding words leaving her lips. You will see. All right. I think... Let me check how long this chapter is before we start it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9... Okay, I don't think we'll be able to do that within the time limit. So we'll probably end it here. I know there's like 20 minutes left, but I'd rather not leave mid-chapter. That I am getting a little winded anyways. We'll continue this reading on Saturday, though. Back to our normal Saturday reading schedule. Hold on, let me make sure we're back on the chapter. I need to update this revision. There we go. Yes, I'll be waiting. Yeah, I'm glad you're enjoying the story, in spite of the, there are a couple errors that I've noticed, but that's what happens when you do all, like, literally all the work of a book writing yourself. You're just gonna miss some things, and that's just how it is, unfortunately. And I've read through this like 3 or 4 times, and I still catch stuff. Or miss stuff. Let's see. Yeah, Saturday we'll be continuing. On our normal schedule, we'll start with reading on Saturday. Let me go ahead and do a save here, because doing that will save my place. Let's see. Tomorrow we're gonna be finishing up Cursed Halo, or trying to. That's what we'll be focusing on. Some goofy shenanigans there. Let's see, what else? Sunday we'll be doing New Vegas, as well as after reading on Saturday, we'll be doing New Vegas. And let's see. What are we going to be, or who are we going to be raiding out to? Let's see who's online. Ooh. Hello? What was this? I know who I'm raiding you into. Someone I actually didn't know streamed until recently, and have been a very supportive and very kind person. I'm gonna raid you guys into Mind Spangle. They're playing something called West of Loathing? I've never heard of that before. Let's make sure I'm spelling this correctly. But thank you all for hanging out. Thank you to everyone who sticks around and enjoys the reading. I know it's not the most exciting content in the world. But to those of you who enjoy it, know that you are number one. Let's see. And yeah, look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow. With much love, many hugs, many kisses. Mwah, and well, bye-bye!